Yeah, we're off. Hi, guys.
Kelly's up to her savings game at Woolworths. She signed up to Everyday Extra from Everyday Rewards and now gets 10% off a monthly Woolworths shop. That's a saving of up to $50 a month.
No income.
Come on.
A conference.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful day with Watchful and I. We have a very special guest that we really enjoy learning from, Pastor Mark Biltz. It's wonderful to have you with us, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's I hear that you just got in from DC.
Yes, I spent a couple of days in D.C. attending.
Hey, Diane, good to see you. Hi, Susan, good to see you too. And Phil, good to see you guys.
Proposing a two-state solution for Israel.
Guys, this Mark Biltz, he's the one that come up with the 4 blood moons, the tetrad blood moons in 2014 and 16. So he's got a little bit of a background of being smart.
Especially in light of this latest attack by Iran.
Huh. Yeah, that's interesting. And are you okay telling the crowd what you were telling us about who knew what in advance, or is that something you'd rather not talk about?
No, I don't mind. I'll talk about anything. I'm one of those guys that likes to stir the pot.
What do you think, Watchful?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is kind of top news. I've even got an article on it here.
Oh, well, see, yeah, this is.
Yeah.
What does your article say, Watchful?
Biden approved the Iranian attack on Israel. This is from the Israel365news.com. So basically, through Turkey as a proxy.
The head of that is Thule Wise, who I just spent the last 3 days with.
Oh. Interesting.
Cool.
So what's your take on
Hey, bye. Good to see you.
But yeah, I was with some of the national senators, congressmen in D.C., talking to them about this whole Iran thing. And a lot of Thule Wise, who I just spent the last 3 days with.
Wow, I messed up again. Sorry.
Feedback.
Sorry, I do this every time. I'm listening though. I'd love to hear your 2 cents on it. Oh my goodness. How do I do this every time? So what's your take on everything, Mark?
Well, going back to the solar eclipse on April 8th, I think it was a warning for our nation that we better side with Israel. And here we are betraying Israel right and left. And so big time judgment is going to be coming here to the United States.
Yep.
Yeah.
If they split Israel, you bet.
And 2 weeks before Passover, we've been going through the events that are recorded in Scripture in the month of Nisan for the 14 days. Well,
Yes.
We'll probably keep going, but we're on what is it, day 6 or day 7? Or
right in there.
Nisan 6 or Nisan 7? I think we're at Nisan 8. So 6 days before Passover. Depending on when I guess it depends on.
Yeah, we are Nisan 8 right now. Nisan 8.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, okay. So we're on the same page on that.
Yeah. Well, what's amazing to me is Christians, do not realize you have to be on the biblical calendar. So a week from now is when the Messiah died.
Correct.
How do we celebrate his resurrection a month before he dies?
Okay, this is 9 days old, guys.
Easter.
Right.
It's supposed to be happening in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It's the pagan holidays.
Exactly. That's what it is. It's on the wrong calendar. It's based only on the sun. God said his is based on the moon and the sun. And so we should be celebrating. I mean, if you want to keep the Easter bunny, I don't care. But the resurrection, you need to keep it when it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So we're on the 8th of Nisan. I'm looking at your calendar right now. And
6 days before Passover.
Yep.
And what is the 20th called? I can't pronounce it. The Shabbat.
20?
Yeah, it's the 12th of Nisan. Mark has something on the calendar that I can't pronounce. Shabbat
Haggadol.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, what
Well,
that
let's see the
means
first
is
fruits.
that means the Great Shabbat, which
Hey,
means
Shawnee,
Shabbat
good to
before
see ya.
Passover.
Okay.
Every Shabbat right before Passover is called Shabbat Haggadol.
No. That's Nisan 12. That's when Jesus did the Olivet Discourse.
Yeah. Yep, Matthew 24.
I see.
Luke 21 and Mark 13.
Yeah, I love how you have some scriptures tied into your calendar. You have something about a leper as well on that date.
Here, let me get out my digital calendar and I'll take a
The,
look.
the
Yeah, he
Metzora.
Yeah, he heals a leper. So we've been
Lord, Shawnee is asking us to pray for a 2-year-old friend she has. Whatever's wrong with the 2-year-old, Lord, please step in and fix it and bring comfort to the family and make things right. We trust you, Lord, and it's a righteous prayer. So we hope you reply. Thank you, Lord. Amen.
talking about Lazarus. We've been talking about the events and the parables that Jesus taught while he was waiting to go heal Lazarus.
Oh, right.
The last couple of days. I think the healing the lepers. Well, yesterday we talked about the 10 lepers, right? That were cleansed and only one returned.
Right.
But I think you're right. I think there's another leper coming up, if I remember correctly.
Well, Lazarus just died, but there are several leper stories.
Yeah.
Well, Jesus
Yeah.
stays in the house of a leper, doesn't he? I think. Matter of fact, today.
There's several different leper stories.
Yeah.
Wow.
We'll read
So-
later today if we have time in John.
Yeah, this last weekend was the Torah portion Metzora, which means leprosy. And so I taught the Torah
Wow.
portion about leprosy and what, how it was handled back then.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You're welcome, Shawnee. You're part of the
40
family.
days from the eclipse, it appears it lands on Pentecost.
Hmm.
Oh, on our, I have
No,
to look
40
at that.
days after the resurrection.
Yeah, I think you mean it's Shavuot or Pentecost is always 50 days from the resurrection.
Got it.
The
So-
40 days, that's when Messiah ascended on the 40th day.
Right.
Gotcha. I keep hearing talk of 40 days after the current eclipse that passed on the 8th. And I'm not sure if it's just, talk of folks that don't really know what they're talking about or if it actually has relevance. So I figured it'd be a good question for you, Mark.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of bogus stuff that was out there on the eclipse saying there was like 8 Ninevehs. There was only 2.
Right.
I think that's what makes it look bad is when people try to exaggerate and make it worth something far more than what it is. If you stick with the math, the science, the truth, then people don't think you're insane and think it's all bogus.
Right.
But that's what's out there. There's a lot of loony prophets out there or people that just want publicity.
Yeah, I agree.
Come here.
Go ahead. If you were going to say something, Watchful.
Well, my comment's going to change the topic. You had asked him a
Okay.
question.
Okay, you want to know what happens 40 days after what? April 8th?
Yeah. Well, if anything at all, I mean, it's, there could be, there might be a window that is wider than 40 days. I guess more or less what I'm asking is, what do you think is to come in the near future? Let's say till about summertime.
I think you're going to see war. I really do. I think you're going to, especially with what's going on.
Diane, what business is it of the Pope's artificial intelligence? What business of his is it?
on with the elections and trying to get Trump in jail and Biden with all of his dementia, you know, and then the whole battle is going to be between who's going to be president. And there are sources, you know, the deep state or whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of people who have a lot riding on this election. And I would not be surprised if we don't even have an election.
Same here.
Yeah.
Seriously. So
I don't even reckon we'll get to the election. I think things will collapse by then.
But gearing up for this election is going to be totally insane. And I'm expecting even some civil riots, big time. It's in my book.
Wow.
I'm expecting to see terrorist attacks, especially after this whole deal with Iran. I believe we're going to see terrorist attacks on our soil. We hear that from Christopher Wray, the FBI director. We hear that from Homeland Security director. All of a sudden, they're saying there's a good chance that we will be attacked. And I really think we're going to have suicide bombers on our soil before the end of this year.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
What did he just say? Let's read the chat.
It's in my book. I'm expecting to see terrorist attacks, especially after this whole deal with Iran. I believe we're going to see terrorist attacks on our soil. We hear that from Christopher Wray, the FBI director. We hear that from Homeland Security director. All of a sudden, they're saying there's a good chance that we will be attacked. And I really think we're going to have suicide bombers on our soil before the end of this year.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, just out of curiosity, in your book, when you are not even in your book necessarily, but you may have wrote it in your book, this recent eclipse was really interesting. Did you happen to make any mention or note anything in regards to the constellation where the eclipse was? Because it was
in the two bands, or the bands between the two fish.
Yeah, what do you make of that?
Well, you know, I did do a little bit of a study on that. I never really spoke on it. I just brought it up. But as you know, the symbols for Christianity are fish, and Israel was always referred to as fish. And the thing that amazed me is not only where it happened, but the so-called Pons Brook Devil Comet comes right through, and we'll be able to see it clearly over Passover. And I almost see that as a sign of Satan falling from heaven. You know,
wow, good pickup. Good pickup.
Interesting. I hadn't heard that one before.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of people referencing the Pons Brook comet, and I have yet to have actually seen anything relevant with comets. I believe that they probably have some significance, but everything that people have pointed out has always been make-believe, in my opinion, up to this point. But that's very interesting. I think that's a good observation. That could be indicative.
Well, it was spotted. The first place it was spotted was in the constellation Draco, the dragon.
Interesting.
And
Really?
Interesting scientific newsworthy items that makes you definitely wonder if this couldn't be that sign where Satan is cast down to earth.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's I don't know. I did a bunch of research on Pisces a couple years ago. And when you go back to the different pictographs that are used, the bands for Pisces are actually chains that are restraining Cetus.
Right.
No
Interesting
way.
that eclipse is right in the stars that mark that chain. It's almost as if it's saying that the restrainer is being removed.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the dragon is being freed.
Yeah, exactly.
I knew this would be a good stream with Mark Biltz. I knew it.
I think so. It's very fascinating.
We also happen to be in the year of the dragon, based off the Chinese calendar.
Exciting year of the dragon. Exactly. That's why I see
Wow.
all of these things coming together.
Yeah.
Which makes you definitely wonder. Satan
And
knows his time is short.
Yeah.
To give our audience some perspective, Mark wrote a book years ago forecasting in April of 2024 that Iran would attack Israel. And I can't help but notice that you hit the nail on the head. And the thing is, it's really nothing to do with supernatural. It's about just using your Bible correctly and using
Right.
Yeah.
the biblical calendar correctly and understanding
Yeah.
the math of the
Yep.
Shemitah cycles and everything.
Yep.
And it's, I applaud you for, focusing out all the noise, getting all the noise out of your head and just focusing on what really matters, which is the signs in the heaven, the biblical calendar, and, the math.
Exactly. That's what it comes down to. In the book of Daniel, chapter 10, we see that Daniel is
Hey, man,
praying
good to
for
see ya.
3 weeks. He's praying and fasting, and it's during the month of Nisan or April.
Hey, go figure.
Okay? And this
Interesting.
messenger appears to him, and he says, I've been fighting the Prince of Persia. That's Iran. For the
Right.
last 3 weeks. And guess what? It began on Nisan 3, which was exactly the 72 hours before the attack. The 3 days that America knew before they were attacked. That is the very same day Daniel started praying. And,
No
and that's, it's
way.
all about a battle with Iran. And then the angel tells him on the 24th of Nisan, he tells him, this whole vision is about the end times. This is what's going to happen to your people in the last days. And now I have to go back and fight the Prince of Persia or Iran. And so when I see it's like there's a heavenly battle going on. And at the same time, it's parallel to our universe where there's an earthly battle going on. And they're happening simultaneously.
So,
Interesting.
can
You
you,
know, there's something there. Isn't it in Daniel also during that time where he sees the vision of the 2 rivers on the one side and the
And
other
the
side?
angel stands on the either side.
Yeah, you know what's,
yeah.
you know what's interesting? Are you familiar with Lighted Way Ministries?
No.
They have a ministry down in, I think it's Eugene, Oregon. It's a husband and wife couple that teach a lot from the Torah, and they also do a lot of work with the signs in the heavens. She was the first person that had brought up that the end of the Festival of First Fruits this year on April 28th, if you count from that day to 1,260 days, it lands on the Day of Atonement in 2027.
Yom Kippur.
Yeah. So you end up you have there's an actual period of time between 2 festivals
Iran, China, and Russia. There's your triple tree.
that matches 1,260 days. So it's really interesting that you made your point about Daniel fasting and praying and talking to the angel, and in that same context is that reference between the division of the rivers.
Yes. Yes.
that's interesting. That's actually pretty incredible. And do you mind explaining the spirit of the Amalek and how it's relevant to everything that you're talking? I'm just trying to help the audience visualize how you piece this together, because it's not a lucky guess, guys. This is through really knowing the Bible and the heavens and the biblical calendar, and it's really, yeah.
I just can hardly wait for both of you to get my book. I'm going to send it both to you guys. And wait till you read it. It's mind-blowing. But you're just so educated on all this anyway. You're going to love this.
No, I'm stoked.
Well, Amalek, you know what Hamas did to Israel, where they were chopping off their heads and their body parts? Do you know why they were doing that?
What?
No.
Because they wanted to force the Israelis to buy the body parts of their kids so they could have something to bury.
Wow.
What?
Wow.
Oh yeah, they cut off their arm, and then when the Israelis want their children back, well, we got an arm. How much are you going to give for their arm?
No
Wow.
way.
Yeah, they're
Are
sick.
you serious?
I'm serious. I'm serious. Do you know what the nation of Amalek? Do you know what Amalek means in Hebrew?
No.
Am is a people group, a nation. Malak is who chops up bodies. The very name Amalek is
No way.
chop up people.
Wow.
And that's exactly what Hamas is. And Hamas means violence in Hebrew. But
Right.
Amalek was when after the original Exodus and they flee Egypt, they're in the wilderness. Now, most people, when they go to war for two things: either to defend themselves or to get land.
Right.
But Israel had neither of those. Israel wasn't attacking Amalek. They didn't need to defend themselves. And Israel had no land. The only reason Amalek was attacking, and who did they attack? The infants, the elderly, which is exactly who Hamas was also attacking and kidnapping, And so God said, look, God said, I'm going to wage war with you in every generation for all of history, basically. And Hitler was a type of Amalek. It's annihilation, just kill all the Jewish people. And Amalek, just like Jacob and Esau wanted to kill Jacob. Well, Esau's grandson was Amalek. And it just continues through that line. And when you go to Psalms 83, it's a prophetic war that hasn't taken place yet. And you'll see Amalek is involved. And so Amalek speaks of Iran and their axis of evil, the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas. And so what we have to realize that spirit of Amalek, if you remember, Haman in the
I'm with you, Shawnee. Bring it on.
book of Esther was from the royal line of the Amalekites. And so Saul, he did not kill all the Amalekites like he was supposed to 1,000 years earlier. So what happens? Mordecai is Saul's descendant, and Haman is the king of the Amalekites, Agag's descendant. So it's the same descendants coming back to fight. And so there, Amalek attacks again. Now, going back to knowing the calendar, the first time Amalek attacked was the month after Nisan, because that's when they left Egypt, and it's the month of Iyar, the second month. The next time Amalek attacked is in the book of Esther and Purim, which is in the last month of the year, the 12th month. So here you have the 12th month and the second month. When's the next time to attack? Right in the middle, the first month, Nisan. And so you see the pattern, because spring is the time for war, it says in the Bible. Well, Nisan's right in the middle of spring. And so he tried in the last month of spring, the first month of spring, and now he's trying right in the middle of spring. Plus Daniel's vision. So I knew there was going to be attack in the month of Nisan. But it's just looking and knowing the patterns in the biblical calendar.
Yeah. What's interesting is, like you said, God had instructed them to wipe out the complete town, men, women, children, and animals. And they didn't. And it's and this is why. But I mean, holy moly. It's so that's great. Now, Watchful, you said you wanted to ask him a question that was going to kind of switch gears.
Oh, well, when you were talking about all the different false prophets out there on the internet that are saying different things and seeing a lot of different signs and wonders, Kip brought this up this morning, reading Ezekiel 13, which deals with false prophets speaking from their own heart, saying things like, hear the word of the Lord. There's a lot of references to flooding and hail. In fact, the false prophets are actually called hailstones, which is an interesting connection with the fall of the dragon down to the earth, with Satan being cast down to the earth. He casts a flood out after the woman. It's just a kind of a data point there. I don't know if you have anything to say on that, but it seems like the possibility of that flood could be a flood of false prophets.
I would totally agree. I think that's definitely a possibility. I think you hit the nail on the head there, Watchful.
Yeah. If you guys haven't read that, read that. That's a really interesting section of scripture. That's Ezekiel 13.
So.
Oh yeah, God is so upset at the false prophets. Basically, Jeremiah was one of the few true prophets. I mean, like 90% of the prophets were all false prophets.
Wow. Do you think that percentage is still the same?
I think it's probably worse.
Yeah. And there is. Wow. Kip had a question for you. She asked, Mark, where are we in the timeline? Are we at the beginning of the 7 years, a midpoint, or somewhere else?
Okay, good question. Again, Daniel was Jewish. The 70 weeks of Daniel refer to 70 Shemitah cycles. So the 7-year tribulation has to begin the beginning of a Shemitah cycle. So when is the next Shemitah cycle? The fall of 2029. So the tribulation cannot start. We can have wars and all kinds of stuff. And I'm not saying the rapture won't happen or will happen. But I'm just saying the tribulation cannot start until the fall of 2029 going into 2030. If it doesn't start then it can't start for 7 more years. It has to be the beginning of a Shemitah cycle because that's what Daniel's vision was of. It was of Shemitah cycles. And if there's one left, it would be the beginning of a Shemitah cycle.
Given that you have this 1,260 day period between festivals that's coming up, or feasts more specifically, is it possible that it could have started in 2022?
See, that's just the question. That's your question. Exactly. Could we already be in it? And that's a big question that people ask. Could we be about to enter the middle of this?
Right.
And I'm not one to say absolutely no. I mean, we could, but the only thing that makes me wonder, I guess there's some things that I don't think have been fulfilled yet. I don't really see a peace covenant between Israel and the Arabs yet. And
well, actually,
you don't get a peace covenant until after a war. And so I think you have to have these major wars I'm talking about coming up first to get a false peace agreement. We've never seen that false peace agreement. Yeah. That's the only reason I would think it hasn't. But hey, I'm not opposed to some of the things it has. We'll find out here pretty soon. But the other thing why I don't, and I could be wrong, I don't think I know it all, but the two witnesses that are righteous prophesy the first 3.5 years. The Antichrist will the second 3.5 years. And I haven't seen two witnesses prophesying in Jerusalem for the last several years.
Is it possible that we have the Shemitah cycles wrong?
Nope, no. It's impossible. And the reason why I say that, it's math. If the Hebrew year is divisible by 7, it's a Shemitah cycle. If it's divisible by 49, the following year is the Jubilee year. It's just simple math. Just look at what year it is, see if it's divisible by 7, and you'll know if it's a Shemitah year.
What if their date is wrong though? This is I actually gave up on calendars because there's so much information out there.
Well, this is what I have for you. I'm giving you in my book. At the last of the book, I list every Shemitah cycle clear back to creation and every Jubilee year clear back to creation. You can check my math. There's not one error in any of the math. And the amazing thing about it, how I know it's true, is when I look at biblical events that happen. For example, the Messiah was born during the 77th Jubilee. Now, that's pretty cool. But he started at the very beginning of a Shemitah cycle. And it was the 541st Shemitah cycle.
Yeah, the Abraham Accords aren't good for us Christians.
Why is that significant? The numerical value of the word Israel is 541 in Hebrew.
Wow.
And he came for his own people. And the very Shemitah cycle he begins with is the numerical value of the children of Israel. I mean, there's things that are just,
Well, I have something.
Even Jonathan Kahn pointed out like the disasters that have happened over the last couple of years, like the attack on the Twin Towers was on a Shemitah cycle. The 2008 collapse was a Shemitah cycle. The 2015 collapse was a Shemitah at the end of the
But here's the thing with Jonathan Kahn is completely wrong. He's a nice guy. He got some good facts. He thinks the Jubilee years were 1917, 1967, and 2017. Okay? He thinks those were the 50 year, and he says that those were the Jubilee years. Impossible. Why is it impossible? If 2015 was a Shemitah year, then 2017 would be in the middle of a Shemitah cycle. You can't have it both ways. 7 times 7 is 49. The Jubilee year always has to follow a Shemitah year.
Right.
How in the world could 2017 be a Jubilee year if 2015 was a Shemitah year? His math is completely off. He goes by emotions, but not science.
Well, I have a question for you. So, first of all, the Abraham Accords, could that possibly be that peace agreement? And
You know,
from
I
my
was thinking about that too, but they got trashed, really. I mean, for the most part, they're over ever since Trump left.
And next, that the rare Revelations 12 sign, from my understanding, happened in 2017.
I think you're right about that, but that just means it's a sign. Just like a lot of people thought something was going to happen on April 8th. No, the eclipse was a sign. Just like
Right.
flashing signals over a train that's coming doesn't mean the train is there. It's just a sign that something
Right.
is coming. Now we have to pay attention to the signs, but nowhere did I ever say anything was going to happen on the day of the sign.
Yeah.
It's just a sign.
Right. Well,
Yeah,
we
well,
don't think that anything happened on that sign. We recognize the uniqueness and significance of it, that it never
Exactly.
happens. It's an anchor point that gives us a position in time to actually work backwards and forward. I often say that now we can reverse engineer what we lost.
I love reverse engineering.
So,
you know what's interesting is we are 6 years, 6 months, and like 15 days since that happened. We're coming up on 7 years from when that happened, and then within like 5 months.
Yeah.
so one thing that brings me back to the Abrahamic Accords is that Saudi Arabia was involved with that. And Saudi was also one of the countries that came to Israel's assistance in this attack this Saturday.
Yeah. Well, you know, one thing, in case you guys didn't know, there's a lot of fake news out there. And
Yeah.
I know you know.
Really? You can't believe everything on the internet?
That's what Abraham Lincoln said.
The first casualty of war is the truth.
Yeah, exactly. Well, here the United States came out and said that the nation of Jordan helped shoot down the missiles. And then the king of Jordan comes out and says, no, we didn't. What are you talking about? And
Really?
so there's it's like, who can believe the truth anymore in this?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much lying going on.
One thing that seems to be true is that the defense against that barrage was miraculous. Somebody had mentioned today that it was on the level of splitting the Red Sea, because they successfully defended over 300 incoming objects from various types and locations
at different speeds.
At different speeds. I was thinking about Zechariah 12. I was reading that today, where God will defend the nation of Israel.
Yeah.
If you guys haven't read that, read Zechariah 12. That's exactly what's happening right now. And within the context of that is when they start to become mournful of the one that they pierced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all I can say is your audience is lucky to have you two guys.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Shawnee, when the Jews got Israel back in 47, Israel was basically a wasteland. They've irrigated Israel now and made it fertile, but when they took over, it was basically a desert. And that's why they want Israel back now, because it's very lush and growing a lot of good stuff.
You know, one thing I also read that's kind of in context is all the wars that we see listed always mention the Philistines, which essentially is Gaza and Palestine.
Well, the word Philistine in Hebrew means invaders of other nations.
No way.
You learn something new every day. That's interesting. All right. Well, it blows my theory out of the water. No. So, go ahead.
So here's a fun verse in Zechariah 12, Zechariah 12:3, and it shall happen in that day that I will make Jerusalem a very heavy stone for all peoples. All who would heave it away will surely be cut in pieces. Though all nations of the earth are gathered against it in that day, says the Lord, I will strike every horse with confusion and its riders with madness. I will open my eyes on the house of Judah, and I will strike every horse of the peoples with blindness. And the governors of Judah shall say in their heart, the inhabitants of Jerusalem are my strength, and the Lord of hosts their God. And that day I will make the governors of Judah like a fire pan in the wood pile, and like a fiery torch in the sheaves. They shall devour all the surrounding peoples on the right hand and on the left, but Jerusalem shall be inhabited by her own place.
Shawnee, I think the Muslims are descended from Ishmael. I actually think that.
Mentioning what you just mentioned a second ago, Watchful, my dad texted me and said during the 6-day war, Israel also had incredible odds with their aircraft and had a 0 loss rate and a kill rate that was way out of proportion for what they should have had. So it's fascinating to see almost supernatural events with what's going on.
And that was the 1967 war, right?
There were a lot of miracles in the
70
Yom Kippur War as well.
73, he said, 1973, whatever that is.
Yeah, it's the Yom Kippur War.
Wow.
Sorry, my daughter was knocking at the door. So it's quite fascinating. So you think there's a good bit of conflict coming?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I believe during our elections, when we may not even have an election, but it'll just be total chaos. They might come up with some virus, or who knows what that might happen. But I believe when we're at our weakest point ever militarily, that you always take advantage of the chaos. I think that's when China would attack Taiwan, North Korea would attack South Korea, Iran and Hezbollah would attack Israel. And what's America to do? We can't even handle the Russian-Ukraine war. We don't have enough money. We're throwing money at. There's no way. If anyone wants to take advantage, they wait until the police are gone, and that's when they do it. And America's trying to be the super cop of the world, and when we're down, that's when the chaos is going to take place.
No, you're right. And there's a military tactic that during chaos there is opportunity, and
Exactly.
you take advantage of the chaos and strike.
And that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And that's what's going to be happening by the deep state, I believe. They're going to create chaos over the elections, and that's when all hell's going to break loose because they want to rule the world. They have to destroy the world to rule the world, and they
Exactly.
built it.
That's exactly what I've been saying. So I've explained this, me and Watch will explain this to our audience several times, that a lot of folks, including some family members I know, can't make sense of what's going on. And I said, you have to understand their plan is to completely collapse everything and then bring everything out of the rubble. And that's when the lawless one enters the stage to offer some sense of hope and normalcy. And at that point, people will accept whatever to get some sense of stability back. Yeah. It's
hey, guys, I enjoy this, but I've got to get scooting because my wife's leaving tomorrow for a week, and I've got to help her get back. And
I know, and I'm surprised you actually took the time to come chat with us, because you got in from DC literally 2 or 3 hours ago.
It's been crazy.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
Before you go, what are you doing in the next week? Are you guys, does your church do something for Passover, or because this is something that we're talking about? We're trying to prepare people to do communion, find a church, go to Passover.
Here's the
Okay, they're cutting this short. It's supposed to go for 2 hours.
thing. We are going to do a Passover.
Yeah, okay.
Seder with around 500 people.
Wow.
And it will be like
Oh, where is it? Hang on. That's it.
Polydent offers strong hold and superior comfort. If your mouth could talk, it would ask for Polydent.
Purveyors of the Queenery.
That's right. We have an amazing interview and conversation for you. But if you would first, it really, really helps us if you would take up the broken sword of your finger, strike down that subscribe button. And while you're down there, tickle that bell.
Yeah, give that bell a gentle caress. Or you can keep your YouTube pin pan strong and smack that bell. Smack it like it knows you might.
That's right. And if you've already done those things, well, first of all, thank you. But also, if you hit the like button, that would really, really help us because it shows the algorithm that you like this video and other people who have shared interests will also like it. That would help tremendously.
Yeah, that's right. Leave a comment, share it with your friends, send it to your enemies, do all the things.
That's right.
Who cares?
Who cares? And without further ado, here is this video's conversation interview. We hope you guys enjoy it.
That's right. Vertical punch.
Your YouTube feed is crap. Stop wasting your time watching bot-boosted shills and self-appointed gurus cloying for your attention. Instead, join the Goslings interview live stream.
I think that's the idea of it, Shawnee, so we don't get our own money without the mark. Pretty sure that's their idea or their motive.
The Goslings, a dark-lit digital speakeasy of free thinkers, a super chat of radical truth-seeking wizards who eat trolls for second breakfast, topics that'll make your mama's hair stand on end, ideas that'll make your pastor's knees knock, guests that will illuminate the hidden chambers of your mind, and interviews that strike down the darkness. Welcome to the Goslings.
Derek and Sharon Gilbert. Derek, we've had you on the show a bunch of times. Sharon, this is the first time we've had you on. And this is awesome for us. This is a huge treat. You're both authors. You're both YouTubers and podcasters, travelers in the good way, not in the Patreon way that we just talked about.
Tour guides.
Tour guides, yeah. And we just spent probably, I don't know, 45 minutes probably in the Patreon segment talking about some really cool things about technocracy and the perhaps real location of Sodom and awesome stuff. By the way, tell Graham Hancock about that. You get that on the mainstream. You get that information under Graham Hancock's nose. And man, I think like you could really might be on Joe Rogan because
it actually wouldn't surprise me if he's read because that stuff was all over the mainstream media.
Was it? Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, when I was listening to you talk about that, I was like, that is as heady as information as anything I've heard about the pyramids. You know, about the construction and the irrefutable weird.
Yeah, it's really big.
Yeah, it is big. That's big stuff. The brining, it was awesome.
And we didn't even mention that according to Dr. Collins, and we've had the opportunity to talk to him about this, the most densest concentration of dolmens in the Jordan River Valley is at the base of the city of Sodom.
Wow.
So, and the dolmens are burial mounds, right? Is that what a dolmen is?
Dolmens are
not quite.
Yeah.
There are very few remains that have been found at those structures, but they're all over the world. And I personally think that they are worship places where you would go and you would interact with the ancestors who are just demons and try to appease them. Otherwise, they would haunt you.
Yeah.
And there are more of them in the Jordan River Valley, closer together than just about anywhere else on planet Earth. But as Sharon said, they're all over the world. They're in Korea, they're in Ireland, they're in the Caucasus. But
in the United States?
Yeah, there are some here in the United States. But 25,000 in the Jordan Valley between the Dead Sea and Mount Hermon. The Golan Heights has about 5,600 of them alone. That's the ancient kingdom of Og of Bashan. The valley between Mount Hermon and the Sea of Galilee, through which the Jordan River runs, got about 1,100. But there were about 1,500 of them at the base of the ancient city of Sodom. And when I asked the director of scientific analysis there, Dr. Phil Sylvia, how are they oriented? Because there's some archaeoastronomy that's being done on those now to see if these megalithic structures, most of which have like sort of a trilithon look, two big slabs of limestone with one across the top, like a little table, which is what the word dolmen actually means. Were they oriented towards solstice or equinox or
like a mini
Stonehenge,
basically?
Yeah. And he said, no, they're all pointed at the temple, the sacred district on the top of the hill of the city of Sodom. They're all oriented towards the temple.
Oh, that's interesting. That's really interesting.
And bear in mind that that city was continuously occupied from about 4000 BC down to the time it was destroyed around 1750 or 1700 BC. So continuously occupied for more than 2,300 years. I mean, from the time of, basically from Nebuchadnezzar until today, roughly speaking.
By the way,
that's a long time.
By the way, you know that I read the Red Wing Saga, so that I have to read a lot of papers from the 19th century. And I think it was Josiah Porter or one of those sort of pastors turned antiquarian who was in that area in what is modern day Jordan. And the locals pointed to that tell and said that that was ancient Sodom. And there's a spring nearby, so it was well watered. And there were other tells that he picked out, and he thought that he could identify all 5 of those cities. Because it wasn't just Sodom and Gomorrah that went down. 5 cities went down.
Yeah, and the team from Trinity Southwest University has identified, I think, those same tells as the most likely candidates. Besides Sodom, you've got several others that are in the area that all show history of occupation until the Middle Bronze Age, and then nothing, just cut off.
I would love to see what you guys and Gary Wayne could come up with if you got together about this new information and just sort of like put your heads together. And talk.
Oh my gosh, we love Gary.
Yeah.
We love him so much.
We do too.
Yeah, he's fantastic. He's
Gary's
fantastic. And isn't there, and this is something, Derek, I think you and I chatted about this briefly. Isn't there some kind of connection that you guys found between Mount Hermon and the subject of Sharon's Red Wing Saga series?
Mm-hmm.
Ram Trucks, Big Horn, Big Deal is on with free rego, CTP, stamp duty and...
Mm-hmm. Oh yes. One of the many things I had to research for, especially the first book, was history of Sir Charles Warren, because he was the the commissioner of the Metropolitan Police. So he was in charge of the Jack the Ripper investigation. He had to take the fall for it when nobody was arrested. They couldn't figure out who was doing this. Well, Sir Charles Warren had been in the military, he was in the army, he was an engineer. He loved mathematics, and he loved, just trying to figure out things like how high is this, how far is that, using trigonometry. He was, I think he ended up retiring as a colonel, but he was a captain with the Army at the time that the Army was tasked to map the Levant, the northern area of what we call Israel and parts of Syria. And one of his goals was to find it, to actually draw out Mount Hermon and to say how high it was, and to also do detailed drawings. He was sponsored by the Palestine Exploration Fund, and he was also part of the Army. So 1869 or so, 67.
September of 1869.
He was on Mount Hermon. They discovered a temple there that was Greek, really old, like probably Alexander old.
Mm.
And then they found that led into an anti-clockwise, the counterclockwise wall that forced you to go counterclockwise. And in that area, and I think it was actually in the temple, but in that area, they discovered this stela. It was a very tall monument that was, I think, a foot thick and 4 feet high.
18 inches thick, 4 feet high, 18 inches wide, 12 inches thick, right, and 4 feet.
Heavy.
Yeah.
Heavy, heavy. And it wasn't local stone. From the top, it had apparently been brought from elsewhere. But on it was writing, and it was not transcribed officially until the 1910s.
1903.
And it says,
Molly, come
by
on.
order of the Most High and Holy God, those who swore
3
an oath
minutes is
proceed
jumping
from
out.
here. Found in a temple, the highest man-made place of worship on earth.
called Casa Antar.
And yeah, so scholars have agreed ever since it was decoded back in 1903 or translated that this is a reference to the Watcher story. Now it's written in archaic Greek, so it's again probably not any older than the 4th century BC. There are some who say maybe as old or as recent as the 2nd century AD. The point is that you got Greek speakers in that region who knew the story of the Watchers as late as the time of the Second Temple. So this is a story that was well known in the ancient world.
So what were they doing in that temple?
Right, right.
And why were they going counterclockwise around the top of Mount Hermon, where there was a depressed area, as if it were there to receive the libation offering?
Yeah, the summit of Mount Hermon is scooped out like it's ready for drink offerings.
Interesting.
In fact, the scholar by the name of Edward Lipinski argues that in the Book of Enoch records that it was in the days of Jared that these 200 watchers descended. Lipinski pointed out that the Hebrew word yarid, which is the same word, which just means to come down, which is where the Jordan gets its name. It comes down from Mount Hermon and descends through, the land of Israel. There was a ritual, a libation ritual called yarid in ancient times when a devotee of a god would walk down from a hill or a mountain to a stream at the base, collect water, and then go up and then pour it out on the top of the hill or the mountain.
Just like they did in Elijah's story.
Just like they did in Mount Carmel, in Elijah's story, right. So, in fact, we know that this was done as late as the 3rd century AD, when the Emperor Diocletian performed the Yarid for his brother Melkart, which was the Phoenician name of Hercules, at the city of Tyre. So it was theorized by Lipinski that this ritual, this libation ritual, was performed on the summit of Mount Hermon, and that stone wall forced the pilgrims ascending to the summit to circle it counterclockwise fashion. Well, Sir Charles Warren asked back in 1869 when he wrote his report, is it possible that the Mohammedans got this ritual from this ancient practice on Mount Hermon?
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they go around the Kaaba in a counterclockwise.
And Warren said that he was told that the Kaaba contains sacred stones from 5 holy mountains, from Mount Ararat, from Mount of Olives, from Mount Carmel, from Jabal al-Nur, which was where Muhammad received his enlightenment, and from Mount Hermon.
Didn't you want to come from Petra? Oh, thinking of something else.
I'd be interested to know what, I'll have to look it up, what the significance is. I can think of a couple of reasons why for the counterclockwise procession.
Well, this is an ancient, it's an ancient ritual that goes back to the ancient city of Ur. At least that's the earliest written record of it, but in the ancient city of Ur, which was a city sacred to the moon god Sin, it was known that during the Akitu festival, which was like a New Year's festival, the god was, carried out, the idol that gave the god locality was carried from his temple out to a special Akitu house outside the walls, and rituals and performances and celebrations. And of course, people had to bring in their tithes. But as part of that, apparently they would circumambulate the fields in a counterclockwise fashion to sort of raise a hedge of protection around the crops. So this is a very old thing. That dates back to about 2500 BC.
Yeah, but why counterclockwise specifically? Is it?
Good question.
Yeah, That's my thing is
because anti-clockwise is going to the left and the path to righteousness is on the right. That would be why I think
that a flagrant, like, is that a rebellion against the natural order?
Yes.
You know, since
yes.
clockwise,
Possibly.
left to right is kind of just the natural order of things.
No, it's
you know?
100%
Or
insult.
is there some other
That's
sort of
possible, but you'll
esoteric
notice that,
significance?
was it the Coriolis effect?
Mhm.
That causes the water to go
Yeah.
down the drain in one direction in the north and in the southern hemispheric,
yeah.
sorry, yeah, it goes the other way.
You're gonna make all the flat earthers mad, Sharon. It'll work.
I know.
When we
All
were
our friends are so mad at us right now.
when we were in the Golan with Dr. Mike Freakman, who's done the most recent excavations at Gilgal Rephaim and at the Serpent Mound of Bashan, both within the last 15 years, he told us that his mentor, Yossi Garfinkel, who did a book years ago on the art of the prehistoric era and what it could tell us about people who lived in the prehistoric world. And he said that 80% of the human depictions in ancient art showed them dancing. And
Are you looking to actualize your inner Leonidas? Are you looking to find something for the Spartan in your life? Look no farther than Jardani Jovanovic. Jardani Jovanovic hair and skincare products made by real men for real men. Or as I like to say, be as sexy as you are deadly. Give 007 a run for his money. Awaken your inner John Wick with Jardani Jovanovic hair and skincare products.
Military gadgets are transforming people's condition and endurance, and here's how. This is what happens when you breathe in 200.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, let's get to our patron question.
Yeah, let's do the Patreon question.
Tim, one of our patrons, asked, and this is kind of long. I'm going to read his whole thing, and then I'll let you guys take a stab at it. He says, "How much do you think that the political leadership / issues that we're seeing are a demonic fire and forget versus a physical interaction between principalities and other fallen angels? Okay. Do you think that they just interact with the very top and everyone else is a useful idiot? Or do you think these guys manifest at Davos and give their guidance?"
Well, if what you mean by manifest at the very top, if you mean that they would only interact with the very top echelon, you mean?
I think that's what he means, yeah.
I think they would start with them when they're young. I think you have to, it's like if you ask anyone, how do you change the political structure of our country? You start with school boards.
Yeah.
And then you go to county, but city.
It's amazing how many they've developed, isn't it, Shawnee, since the COVID?
Municipalities. You start small. You start when a child is young. You teach him. I think that, and we could get into SRA and all of that, but I think that many of these individuals.
Okay, the TV's playing up. Hang on, guys.
Of our country. You start with school boards. And then you go to county, but city, municipalities. You start small. You start when a child
I'm going to have to
is
go
young,
and come back in.
teaching.
It's
I think
glitching.
that, and we could get in it.
It's glitching, guys. Hang on.
How do you change the political structure of our country? You start with school boards. And then you go to county, but
let me just check it's not doing that elsewhere.
Terry White Kmart has real deals on all your favorite.
Nah, so it's just them. I can't help it, guys.
I think that's what he means, yeah.
I think they would start with them when they're young. I think you have to, it's like if you ask anyone, how do you change the political structure of our country? you start with school boards. And then you go to county, but city, municipalities. You start small. You start when a child is young, you teach him.
Hi, boss. I didn't see you sneak
And we
in,
could get
mate.
an SRA and all of that, but I think that many of these individuals were receiving visits, instructions, deal making as they were growing up, and especially as they got into the early years of their political careers, because the leaders of this world didn't start out as presidents. They started out as local politicians.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Get them
Well,
out of there.
and I think they figured out the pressure points too, which is why so many district attorneys here in the United States have been funded, have had campaigns funded by George Soros and his Open Society initiative, because they've realized that because of the latitude that a district attorney has in deciding which cases to prosecute, they can fundamentally change society by just deciding which cases to prosecute and which others to dismiss and throw out.
Mhm.
Do they manifest at these meetings like Davos and issue marching orders? I don't know that it's quite that overt. I think that they're probably a lot sneakier than that. A lot of these people, even George Soros, he may truly believe he is working for the betterment of humanity as a whole. And just, I know that Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum looks like a villain from Central Casting, but
Dude, he looks like the bad guy from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
Oh, he really just needs a white cat to stroke.
like
Yeah, I
Dr.
mean,
Evil or Blofeld.
Yeah,
But
Blofeld.
he may truly believe that he's working for the betterment of humanity and just not realize that he's being whispered to by some entity.
Soros is well named. Soros. We're in the time of Soros now, and he's orchestrating all of this BLM stuff and things like that.
Yeah.
That is giving him ideas. He may think these are all his ideas, and so I don't know that there's any secret, really. These secret dark meetings. I'm sure that there are some of those that go on there. It's just we don't know what we don't know, and so we choose not to speculate. But we do know that we are told in Scripture to be wary of doctrines of demons, and we see that the policies that are being promoted by many of these globalists are literally inhuman. I mean, on the one hand, they want us to adopt all of these green energy initiatives, and on the other hand, they're blocking all of the infrastructure that would be needed to make possible these green energy initiatives.
Absolutely. Eat the mystery meat, but also don't eat real meat. Oh, wait. Don't, doctrines of demons.
We want you all to drive
abstain from
and
consuming meat.
please don't take a
Vegetarianism is a
photograph.
doctrine of demons.
Don't take a photograph of me sitting here eating this nice sirloin steak.
Yeah, we want you all to drive electric cars, but we don't want you to produce enough electricity to power the electric cars, or to have the high voltage lines that will carry the power to the places where you need to recharge your electric cars. It is literally an inhuman agenda, and it's very Western, very Eurocentric actually when you think about it. So we've got our nice little society here. We live in our 15-minute city where I can walk and get my latte, my half cap double latte or whatever. The people in Africa, to protect the planet, we need to keep them living in mud huts without power.
Digging out that lithium.
Yeah, exactly. And they keep digging the lithium and the cobalt. Yeah. So it is literally an inhuman agenda, and so I think we just know them by their fruits. We don't know. We don't have those special glasses from They Live where we can see the demons when we're looking at them, but we can see them by their fruits.
And we can pray for them.
Yeah.
It's really easy again to get caught up in anger because we see what's happening to the world. Yet the Lord told us these things would be happening, so we shouldn't be surprised by them. He prepared us by telling us. So let's start praying for the people that are in these positions. Even if only one of them accepted Christ, wouldn't that be wonderful?
Makes it worth it. Yep.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, it would be. I'll pray for Elon Musk. I think that'd be great.
Yeah, you know what? I think yes. He just got back from Israel. Did you see that story?
I didn't. No.
Yeah.
He visited with the families of the hostages and some of the slain soldiers, the fallen soldiers, and one of the families gave him a necklace that says "Bring them home" on it in Hebrew. And he promised he would wear that until every hostage was home.
Yeah. I think he was really moved by what he saw at Kfar Aza, which was the kibbutz that was the hardest hit and virtually destroyed on October 7th. So
That's interesting. That phrase,
yeah.
bring him home. I know it's.
Bring them home.
Oh, okay. I was going to say there's a Greek phrase for that. Anakalestion, I think.
Ah, that's interesting.
It's bring him
That's
home. I learned it from Stephen Pressfield's book.
I just thought it was, a song from, a musical.
Yeah. It could be. I don't know. All Uncle Steve may pull a fast one on me.
It's from Les Miserables.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. I'm going to choose to believe that it predates.
Well, you guys have organized some really great trips and tours of the Holy Land in the past. How, and I'm sure you've have a lot of relationships with people that are over there.
The cat thinks he's a star now. You've seen his tail.
How has this whole war in Gaza impacted you guys personally?
Well, it's been hard to see friends of ours, people who we know personally, who have been called up into the reserves. The archaeologist that we mentioned, Dr. Mike Freakman, is now carrying a weapon instead of a trowel. The CEO of Lipkin Tours, Aaron Lipkin, who's facilitated, it was really through his offer to us, hey, do you want to be Pied Pipers? I don't know, what does that mean? Which has allowed us to return to Israel twice now, so we've been there 3 times altogether. He is now also in the reserves, and not to insult Aaron, but he is years past prime fighting trim.
Yeah.
So, but he's being called upon to do what he does best, which is operate a drone. Yeah, operate a security drone that would monitor the area around the village where he and his family live for incursions. So they're taking advantage of his skill set.
Mm-hmm.
But there are thousands, tens of thousands of stories like that around Israel of men and women who are no longer in their 20s who have been called up into this fight, and people who are living well away from the border with Gaza and well away from the northern border, where we visited a couple sites connected to the Book of Enoch. We visited a place that we believe is Avel Ma'in, mentioned in the Book of First Enoch, where Enoch delivers God's judgment to the weeping watchers. And we had to go through a village called Metula, which is the northernmost village in Israel. It's surrounded on 3 sides by the Lebanese border. They are well inside that area, that buffer zone that's been evacuated by Israel because of the danger of rockets and snipers from the Lebanese side of the border.
More rockets hit in that area this morning. It was an area probably half an hour's drive south of Metula.
Yeah. So areas that we visited and were just delighted to see, and looking across the fence, and our tour guide was messing with us. Yeshai Avital's got a wonderful sense of humor. You see that white van over there? Yes. Hezbollah. What? And then we look closer and it says UN on the side.
And what you have to ask, hold on, why is the UN over there?
And why are they not stopping? I mean, the whole point there was to keep the 2 sides apart and to keep the peace, but clearly they're not, as we learned from Gaza with the UN Relief Workers Agency, who was one of the...
really testy about that on social media.
The
response has been essentially stop bad-mouthing us. We're not doing anything.
Yeah, well, anyway, one of the UN aid workers was one of the captors that held one of the Israelis for 55 days in his attic. So, so we know people who are being impacted by this, and who they just know that when the air raid siren goes, you've got X number of seconds to get to the safe room in case the missile hits your house. And this is just the way they've lived for 75 years. For them, it's just the way, it's like here in the American Midwest, the tornado siren goes, okay, you go to your safe place in case the tornado comes close. It's just, but you get more warning for those than you do with those missiles, especially when you're living close to Gaza or when you're living close to the Lebanese border. You may have as few as 15 seconds to get to your safe room. So when we asked for prayer for our friends who'd be called up into the reserves, I actually got some pushback on social media from professing Christians. They say, well, the Palestinians are justified because the way they've been oppressed since 1948 and blah, blah, blah. Like, wait a minute. Or even worse, it's not the real Israel because they're Khazarians. They're actually Turkic people from Central Asia who just call themselves Jews. Like, who cares? I mean, that doesn't really matter. If you can't look at what happened October 7th and condemn that as just flat evil, then your moral compass is broken.
Yep.
Yeah, innocent lives are innocent lives, whether they're Ashkenazi or Khazarian or,
Absolutely,
Israeli.
absolutely,
you know.
absolutely.
And that sword, like all swords, it cuts both ways. And it's a messy situation that has geopolitical ramifications. But I'll tell you, like, if Ukraine taught us anything, it is that NATO and the UN are not here to help people. It's like that Reagan quote, like we were talking about in the Patreon exclusive.
Right.
What are the 8 or 9 most terrifying words you can hear? I'm from the government. I'm here to help.
Right.
Just whenever they show up, it's like, well, this just got worse. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So
there's been,
we know the official story is almost always wrong. But,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Again, any analysis of what's going on in Israel right now that
It'll
doesn't
take 10 years to figure out.
I actually subbed to him. I actually subbed to him in Safari. I play some of his stuff, not often though.
It won't be figured out until Christ returns at the head of a heavenly army.
True.
Because this is a supernatural war. This is not going to be solved through negotiation. It's not going to be solved with giving the Palestinians a separate state.
Right.
That is just not.
That is never going to happen, and it won't work.
And especially it's not going to happen now because Israelis, I mean, they were so divided when we were there back in March. We had people calling us and texting us, "Are you okay? We've heard that they closed the embassy and ordered Americans to leave." It's like, well, none of that's true. But yeah, there was a big political divide there between left and right. But that has been erased by Hamas and Hezbollah.
For now.
For now, anyway. Yeah. Once this is over, then they'll go back to fighting with each other. And it's not clear Netanyahu's going to keep his job much longer after the war is over. But for now, they are unified in a way that the Israelis have not seen since probably 1948.
Yeah.
It really is, their 9/11 across multiple spectrums.
Well, John Haller was saying that the same thing. From Prophecy Update, he was.
Susan, when I wake up after a night's sleep, my YouTube, I'm not joking, it's got like 250 notifications.
Mentioning how Netanyahu was not popular when there was this huge divide between Israelis, right and left. This war united everybody, but there's no chance he's going to remain in power after this thing.
So Amir believes in the rapture. When does he say the rapture is?
Settles down.
No,
Probably not.
In fact, I think that there are probably others, Bennett and Pete and some of the others that would like to have been running things. I think they're all heaving sigh of relief if they're not the one that has to be in office, because there's no winner as far as politics is concerned.
No.
Whatever happens, the point person is going to be gone.
If he's going to get the blame. How did this happen? How did we get caught by surprise? But the bottom line here is this, though: whether you believe in the nation of Israel as the literal fulfillment of God's promise to restore the state of Israel, and we do think that this 1948 was fulfillment of prophecy, more than 2,000 years old. It is a supernatural war for control of that land. In Isaiah chapter 14, which in the King James is that famous chapter, "How art thou fallen, O Lucifer, son of the morning?" This divine rebel wants to establish his mount of assembly in the far reaches of the north. And that phrase, mount of assembly, is key. In Hebrew, that's Har Moed. Har Moed. That is the Hebrew phrase that John, the Revelator, transliterated into Greek and got transliterated from Greek back into English incorrectly as Armageddon, which is why we get respected Bible prophecy teachers saying that the final battle will take place at Megiddo. No, Har Moed, that glottal stop in there. There's no character in Greek or English that corresponds to it. But what it means is this whole war is about who controls God's mount of assembly, his mount of the congregation. Where will he rule for all eternity? The fallen realm wants it. God is defending it. The people who are defending it, like David in the Old Testament, like Solomon, imperfect, flawed, failing, failures who don't follow God's will perfectly. But the war, the real conflict is taking place in the spirit realm, and it ultimately will end at Jerusalem. That's the battle called Armageddon. It's for the Mount of Assembly, which is Zion.
Yeah. Okay. That was one of the first. So when I read your, I think it's in the Second Coming of Saturn, and you talked about there's God's mountain, and directly across from it, there's the Mount of Olives, and how the Mount of Olives essentially is the site of Armageddon, like you're saying. I had never thought of that. I just always heard it's going to be in Megiddo, but there's no mountain there.
You realize that it makes no sense.
There's no mountain there, and Zechariah 14 says when Messiah returns, he lands on the Mount of Olives. Why would he do that if the armies of the world are 50 miles?
Okay, we'll do that army safari one, guys. It only goes for 8 minutes, so we'll use this as an intermission. Did it load? Yes, it did. He doesn't copyright either.
To build the third temple, because we already have 2.5 months ago, a Christian website began to run a whole thing of Hamas attacked Israel because Israel is about to build the third temple, because we already have a red heifer, we will burn it and use its ashes, blah, blah. All of that was fake. Israel today, the 22nd, today, Israel is not going, no one in Israel is going to sacrifice a red heifer or burn a red heifer. There were fake pictures of an altar that allegedly was built on Mount of Olives for this. Everything was fake there. Yet Christians make such a big deal out of it. Listen to this, that because it became such a good item, the speaker of Hamas, the spokesman of Hamas, 100 days into the war, used it in his speech. When the war started on October 7th, the Palestinian Hamas didn't mention one word about a red heifer. They did mention that Israel is violating the temple or desecrating the Temple Mount because we go in there to visit that place. They didn't like the fact that we're there, but they never mentioned any red heifer. But when throughout the first 3 months of the war, the rumors the fake rumors, the fake news of allegedly a ceremony that's supposed to happen today on Mount of Olives in order to build the third temple, when that surfaced, Hamas thought, well, that's the best thing that we can use. We can show the world that there was indeed a good reason for us to start the war. The Jews are about to destroy Al-Aqsa and build a temple. Look how very poor biblical understanding of Scripture leads to sensationalism, leads to fake news, that leads to our enemies using it as an excuse to butcher and massacre us. It's terrible, if you ask me. Don't think for a second that I am underestimating the idea of a red heifer. I'm not. There might be a red heifer. It might be burned a few years from now. I don't know. But for us, the believers, any attempt to always think about a third temple and any attempt to be busy with preparation of the third temple is not exactly following Colossians 3. If you are indeed raised with Christ, that seek those things which are above. For us, it's about the rapture of the church. It's about the bema seat of Christ. It's about being in heaven in the throne room of God. It's about being ready for the marriage supper and getting married with the Lamb as his bride, and then returning with him, and then abolishing whatever it is on the Temple Mount in order to build the 1/4 temple where Jesus will reign from. Everything that Christians do today in order to support and hype the idea of the third temple is not serving anything but the enemy as an excuse to attack us, but also it serves confusion for the Jewish people. Look, for the Jewish people, the third temple may appear to be a good thing, but it will turn out to be the biggest disaster. The Antichrist is going, if Hitler killed a third or two-thirds of the European Jewry, the Antichrist will kill two-thirds of.
With a history spanning 110 years, we invite you to create a path for the future.
All the Jews around the world. It's going to be a massive slaughter of Jewish people as a result of the reign of that man who will enter into that temple and declare himself as God. We have to be very, very careful when we promote things that are not yet to happen, as if they're about to happen, creating hysteria and playing right into the hands of our enemies. Do I think that a third temple will not happen? Will not stand? Of course I do. I think there will be a third temple, but I don't think I'll be here to see it. I don't think it's for us to promote it, donate towards it, hype it, or be busy with it. We need to prepare the souls of the Christians to be ready and to be right with the Lord, so they will be taken before the Antichrist will arise, before the third temple will be built, and before he will walk in and declare himself as God.
Okay.
So we have.
So he's a pre-tribber. He just said we won't be here when the man comes. So he's a pre-tribber.
To make it very clear, everything of the last 3 months regarding the red heifer is fake news. It was fake photo of the altar. It was fake information about the ceremony that's supposedly happening today. It's fake, and it's based on fake news. It created a lot of, I guess, very nice TV shows and YouTube videos, but it's fake. It is destructive.
Okay, guys, he's saying the red heifers are fake. Didn't they have footage from the farm they took the red heifers from in Texas and take it to Israel? And it was apparently 6,000 miles. But wasn't there footage of that following the journey of these 5 red heifers? I thought there was.
It is confusing, and it is not for us to deal with. It's important to understand that's the enemy's using.
He seems to be now, doesn't he?
Using it. Not just the enemy Hamas, but
I know, Diane. I don't think he's right about these red heifers. I don't think he's right about them.
Satan himself is sowing confusion when people take things out of context. So, bottom line, I believe there will be a third temple. I believe that the third temple is going to be used by Satan himself. And I believe that Jesus will come back with us to build a fourth one where he will reign from. But until then, all that we need to do is to spread the gospel for people to not even be here for the third temple to be built. And also, I would not use money of the saints to build the house of the Antichrist. And I would not encourage Israel to move forward with all of this thing as if it's a good thing. For Christians to breed red heifers in Texas and fly them in a special plane to Israel in order for the third temple to be, this is wrong. It's wrong because what you're projecting is you're excited about the third temple. You want to push forward. You want to, look, it's just.
Well, just saying the facts means we're excited about it. Amir, I think you're way off on this one, mate.
Like Abraham, Hagar, and Sarah. God promised a son to Abraham via Sarah. But somehow Abraham thought, let's do it, and let's do it with Hagar, because I'm not sure Sarah is going to be able to do it. Look, we do not want another Hagar moment where we.
I know, Diane. It was this old white guy farmer that was interviewed with the red heifers. So there's complete history of it. First time I ever heard me get it wrong, and he's a pre-tribber. Well, that's concerning as well.
Are pushed.
I'm not really concerning. You can believe what you want. I just don't agree with you.
Pushing prophecy with our own ways rather than let God fulfill his plans. We are here for the sole purpose of spreading the gospel and preparing the people.
Amen.
And part of preparing the people is not to hype and be excited about the things of the enemy, but is to warn of the things of the enemy. And when you start floating fake news and fake information to gain likes and followers and views, you're playing into the hands of the enemy, and you are causing confusion among the saints. And many of them, I cannot imagine how many people today will walk away from faith because nothing's going to happen with the red heifer. There is no ceremony, there is no burning, there's nothing. So it's important that we stay focused and not follow trends that are based on hysteria, on sensationalism, and mostly on fake news.
Okay, I'm pretty sure the stuff I saw about the red heifer coming from Texas, it was legit. It wasn't fake.
Out of Olives essentially is the site of, Armageddon, like you're saying. I'd never thought of that. I would just always heard it's going to be in Megiddo, but there's no mountain there.
You realize that it makes no sense.
There's no mountain there, and Zechariah 14 says when Messiah returns, he lands on the Mount of Olives. Why would he do that if the armies of the world are 50 miles away at Megiddo? No, it's all about Jerusalem and who controls.
Wow, that's a good point. Why would he be standing on the top of the mountain when Armageddon's 50 miles away? That's a pretty good point.
God's mounted assembly.
That's awesome.
It reminds me, it paints that picture. If you take that battle away from the valley, it paints that picture in even a grander, bloodier scale when you take in Revelation 14:20. I had to look it up to make sure I was remembering it correctly, where it talks about blood came out of the winepress onto the horses' bridles. That like the carnage is that intense. And it's like, I can kind of get that, water displacement, carnage gets bad enough in the bowl of a valley, and then when you take it out of that context, you put it at a different geographic location with different topography.
Yeah, in a big flat area.
Okay.
Yeah. The valley around Jerusalem, boy, when you look at that, the Kidron Valley right there, which then meets the Valley of Hinnom, Gehenna, just southwest of the city of David, and the Valley of Rephaim, which extends off it. Yeah, you can see how that, and then the Tyrolean Valley is the other.
I can't remember. That doesn't sound right, but anyway.
Yeah, it starts with the T. I just don't remember. Anyway, our friend Carl Gallup showed us that when you look at a map and you look at how those valleys are arranged around the city of Jerusalem, it makes the letter Sheen, which is the first letter of the Shema, and you show that to a Jewish believer, and they go, "Oh." So yeah, it's really astonishing.
Well, you guys are planning on going back to Israel at some point, right?
Well, we originally had the dates of very end of March of 2024, but because of what's going on there now, and especially the revival after the ceasefire was broken. Thank you.
Big surprise.
Yeah, we all knew it was going to happen. We decided to change. Yeah, we decided to change the dates.
Yeah, we are looking at, and these are not yet confirmed, but it's likely going to be early November of 2024, just after the high holy days of Sukkot, Feast of Tabernacles, Yom Kippur. That is a very difficult time to tour in Israel because you've got so many practicing believers who just are not available to, show you the sites, operate the hotel or the restaurant or what have you. So,
I think next year it's going to be extremely well attended.
Yeah. But every quote that we've seen from a representative of the Israeli government, of the Israeli military, is that this is not yet even halfway over as we're recording this here now in early December. So they've got a long way to go before they are done with Hamas. And of course, the question remains, will Hezbollah try to expand this to the north? Just this morning, there was a rocket that was fired into Israel from Syria. And of course, you got the Yemenis who are trying to expand it in the Red Sea. So
they're going after the United States, and it's actually Iran doing it through the proxy Houthis, but
Right.
Iran is also working with Hezbollah, and they're actually backing Hamas.
they are the puppet masters, and they're pulling on the strings of these enemies that are all around Israel. So
So the question Derek and I have been asking each other is, why is the king of Persia trying to take over Israel? And who is the king of Persia?
the prince.
The prince, sorry,
Mhm.
the prince. He thinks of himself as a king.
Well, right.
But the leader, the spiritual God, the fallen entity, and in this case, there would be a watcher class entity
Mhm.
who is in charge of Persia.
Yeah.
He's powerful enough to delay an angel.
Yep.
So
And one of the
Yes,
most powerful archangels, yes. It is, I think, a common misperception among Christians, the 40% of us who think that Satan is real, that Satan is the supernatural enemy of God. He is one of the supernatural enemies of God.
yeah.
Jesus made clear that he has a kingdom, and he certainly leads the rebellion in the end times, according to the book of Revelation. But there are others out there, and we think that they are jockeying for position.
Yep.
Just as in a political fight, you may have all members of one.
Diane, I saw an interview with the farmer that's looking after there was 5 red heifers. Apparently one's died. They probably practice on that. But I actually seen the farmer get interviewed about the red heifers somewhere in Israel. It was like, they never let you know where it was, but they actually interviewed him. So Amir's saying this is just a made up story, but it's not made up. We've seen the evidence of it.
Party who hate the other guy who's sitting in the White House or sitting in number 10 Downing Street, but
Yeah, and that makes perfect
fight with
sense.
each other. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, from their perspective, it makes perfect sense because you have an entire, you have a 1/3, a whole cast that has, been kicked out of heaven for their rebellion, for their prideful desire to ascend to the, utmost. And
Diane, what do you think's going on with Amir that he went down that road? Because he's usually pretty cool. So what made him go down that road, I wonder? Maybe he doesn't want to admit that the red heifers equal sort of the end so quickly. Because he didn't he suggest we're here till 2029? Was that him?
place their throne amongst the stars. And so, of course, they're not all going to bend the knee to one guy. Like they might out of, out of self-preservation, out of a sycophantic fear. Like it was a running theme, especially in like the later novels in the Heavenly Realms series, where like, dude, all of these guys are like competing with each other, and it's like a totally toxic work environment. It's like Viacom, how it owns all of these other channels, or like Wells Fargo or Vanguard or BlackRock owns all these banks, and they all can. It's a bad father making all of his children compete to see who the best son is, who can be his right-hand man when he takes on the throne, and it's
Game of Thrones on steroids. Or
yeah, it really is.
The other show. Succession,
yeah, but it's the way Hitler managed his staff.
Yeah, he would put several in charge of one thing, and they would each try to do it the best.
Hey everyone, I'm Jonathan Goss with the Gosslings. Give your inner Christian warrior something to really gravitate towards and feed upon with Heavenly Realms, a series of 7 novels about angelic warfare written by me, yours truly. It is masculine, warrior-based fiction that is biblically based, but is extremely gratifying for the warrior in all of you. It is available on Amazon in paperback, ebook, and audiobook. If you like it, leave a review. If you want signed copies, you can always email us at thegoslingsgroup@gmail.com. And I would really love to hear from you. Again, Heavenly Realms by Jonathan Goss, available on Amazon. Check.
Shawnee, that's the perfect place to take the red heifers from. Babylon. Take them from Babylon and sacrifice them in Israel on the temple. That's a perfect reason that they come from Babylon. Like it's actually sacrificing Babylon, killing Babylon.
By cutting the throats of the others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, I think so. The spirit realm is a lot more complicated than we've been taught. So yeah, the Prince of Persia would be interesting to know who he is. The Prince of Greece that was mentioned in the book of Daniel, we think is probably the character that we know as Satan, the storm god, because that character was the king of the pantheon. Well, going back to ancient Mesopotamia, he was the king of the pantheon for the Canaanites, for the Hurrians and Hittites in the north, for then the Greeks, then the Romans. And I think as political power shifted further west, he just kept moving west. And so I would suggest he's the Prince of the United States. I mean, the U.S. Capitol is named the Capitol because that was the Capitolium was the name of the Temple of Jupiter, just the Roman identity of this character. So they named the Capitol for the Temple of Satan, essentially, in Rome.
I mean, that makes perfect sense. We talked to Gary Wayne about it, I think 2 or 3 interviews ago, about the geomancy of DC and, the occult, the Bavarian Illuminati, the French Enlightenment, but it all traces its roots back to the esoteric mystery cults, which are all Luciferian, satanic, whether it's Kabbalah or whatever it is that existed in the Garden of Eden. It all runs its roots back to
It's
that.
very, very old.
Well, and one thing that I wrestled with a lot, or toyed with, I guess, in the Heavenly Realm series is if you're the principality, if you're a principality, if you're the Prince of Persia, if you're the Prince of Greece, is that you? Is that an entity, a specific character, a specific fallen angel, or is that a title, like a commander in chief or like a rear admiral? And
That's a really good question.
And that's kind of how I treated it. Like, I think the Prince of Persia was a specific fallen angel, or it may have been the Prince, the son of Satan, which was like a total fabrication I did, just for fun. But but the Principality of Greece was like 3 different fallen characters, and they're all kind of like buddies. They were like, yeah, I had it during the, the time of like the first guy, it was this character named Argo. And he had it during the time of Achilles in the Trojan War. And then when his star faded, his twin brother, Lake, took over, and he was the Principality of Greece during the time of Thermopylae. And then they got beaten out by when Alexander the Great started to take over by this other fallen angel who came in and sort of kind of like ousted them, and then it got handed over to another guy who was like, so it's like a position that's like changed hats. It's like, oh yeah, you've had it during that time. Oh yeah, I had it during that time. Boy, my time would have been a lot easier if you hadn't have like screwed that up. So I don't know. It's but who knows, man? It's such a
but there's a speculation that because the what we take as the proper name Satan is actually a title both in the Hebrew and the Greek. It is Ha-Satan or Ho-Satanas, and it is the Satan. The question arises, is that character the same all through history? Or has that office, the adversary, been held by different characters throughout history?
Yeah.
In fact, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, there are a couple of prayers among the Dead Sea Scrolls where it's plural. Oh Lord, protect us from the Satans.
Well, and is that like a generic or colloquial term, to refer to, this host of fallen? Or is there are times in the Bible where, especially with Job, and then I guess in Isaiah, when he talks about walking amongst the fiery stones, where it does seem like they're referring to a specific character, a specific entity. But yeah, you think about that sometimes, like, okay, is this a collective thing where sometimes it's Shem Yaza, or sometimes
I don't think it's Shem Yaza, but I do think that Satan, as we call him, is now one entity.
Yeah.
There may have been a contest to see who got to be the top dog, but I think now there is a top dog, and he is. He promised. We have a theory, and it's not ours alone. There are others who think this, that Satan, if you want to call him that. At the time, he was probably going by who knows what name. I mean, it's just his
Azazel.
So
Mm-hmm.
he made a promise to Shenyaza, look, if you get in there and you create a nice army for me, if the creator, if the one, if Yahweh does anything to you, if you put you in jail, I'll get you out.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. You do this for me, I'll do that for you.
Yeah, we'll break you out and it'll be great.
You know, that was
Knowing that he was going to get tossed into prison, and it's like now suddenly he's got an army that he didn't have to go to Tartarus.
It's a nice little coup d'etat that he pulled.
Right.
Yeah, if you think about what we see in the first Enoch, it says, I don't know that you guys are really going to go through with this. That's why they had to swear the oath.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nobody gets to back out now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and once you create that army, I mean, that's such a, you know, and it's something I've wrestled with. The Nephilim spirits are such a tragic bastardization of angelic and human spirit. Like, what do you do with that? Do they have souls? Do they not have souls? Can they be redeemed? Can they not be redeemed? Where do they go? And then, you know,
it's one character. I have a character named Theseus, who's actually Theseus from the legends, from the myths. Yeah. He's in the Red Wing saga, and he has a conversation with Charles, who is the main character, and Charles tries to convince Theseus that he's entirely wrong about everything. His concept of God the Creator is wrong. His concept of the plan of the Nephilim and their daddies down in Tartarus and the fallen angels who came in post-Babel, that their plans are all wrong, that they will all end up on the wrong side of victory. They will be the losers, and God will be the winner. And Theseus, who presents himself as, I'm better than any of them because I have hybrid vigor. I'm better than an angel. I'm better than a human. I can see both sides. He starts to wonder. And I only do that because it does sometimes, if you have compassion at all, to realize they weren't supposed to have a spirit. They weren't.
Okay, Diane, that's pretty self-evident, isn't it? Why do you think Amir is denying this red heifer story? There's something behind it, because if he looked at it like we do, we know it's a true story. So what's behind him saying that it's not true? There's got to be some motive.
They're supposed to have a soul, and yet somehow they had one because it was free when their bodies died.
Yeah.
So what is what is it about this? Are they entirely past redemption? If one of them could ask, how can I be redeemed? Is that the point? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either, but as a writer, it's something that's worth exploring as a thought experiment especially to provoke, you know, in the technical term of prodding with a pointed stick, you know, to provoke other Christians to think about, and just people in general, I guess, to think about your cosmology and what you think of salvation and what you think of God, and is there hope for you? Because it's like, dude, Christians will argue over whether or not your dog winds up in heaven, you know, or like you'll have these Christians who will be like, well, I mean, my dog might be there, but these Nephilim, nope, they're all gonna burn in hell forever. It's like, well, dude, like the Nephilim, they didn't ask to be Nephilim, so like, what do you do with that, you know? And whatever your answer is, it's fine.
Well, you're exactly right, and I think that's one of the beauties of writing fiction. Not only is it a really good way for some people to learn, they learn better through fiction than they do through nonfiction.
I do.
But it also allows for, that thinking outside the box and asking a lot of questions. Derek does it in his fiction too.
That self-reflective thing is one of the greatest elements, one of the most potent and powerful tools and weapons of the writer, is to get you to step outside, cognitively reframe your world through the lens of something that's relatively safe because it's fiction. You know, you're not being faced boldly with the thing. You're, you know, masking it as something else. You know, it's sugar to help the medicine go down. You know.
Well, the fallen realm, the other side. Yeah. They've been using fiction to do this for millennia.
Oh, of course.
There were
yeah.
plays and pageants that would go on. There were stories that were told, songs that were sung, all to tell the story to get it into the mind of the people. Stephen King is a fine writer, and he does that very thing. He spends a lot of his writing inside the head of his characters.
Yeah.
So you get a lot of those thought problems because they're trying to work through things. But the problem with Stephen King is he doesn't believe in a redeemer. He only believes in hell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
There's always
his
a problem.
solution is something mankind has to figure out. And of course, it
Yeah.
never works because there's always, oh yeah, he didn't really kill the thing.
Right.
It's coming back.
That's that's a horror trope that truly codifies the genre as horror. And it's one of the reasons why I never really gravitated towards it is because like there's always the dark side of the supernatural. There's never the good side. So there's always the demon, there's always the witch, there's always the monster, the vampire, the werewolf, the hell spawn HP Lovecraft Cthulhu, that rises from the depths. And it's like, okay, well, we're gonna accept that, but there's never the guardian angel. There's never, the redemptive blood of Christ. There's never like, the Holy Spirit. There's never anything that shows up unless it's like your dead mom, who comes back, to show you or whatever, some crap like. But I think that's why, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah.
Yeah, I do. We'll go there.
Silly.
I know what you're talking about.
That's but that's why I think H.P. Lovecraft is such an important author. I never got into King, but I love H.P. Lovecraft, and like that guy. You talk about Tartarus, you talk about the Nephilim, the Watchers. I think that guy, without even knowing it, was tapping into something, especially during that age, the age of spiritualism, the late 19.
I do too, for sure.
So
he claimed he was an atheist, but he drew a lot of material from the teachings of Blavatsky and Crowley and so on. Yeah. But it's known that when he was a boy, age 6 to 7, he spent the better part of a year just not sleeping at night or terrified of sleeping.
The night gaunts.
The night gaunts, right? Exactly. So, and both his mother and father were eventually institutionalized. So something was going on with that family.
Oh yeah, she used to. She wanted a daughter, so she used to dress him up like one.
Oh.
Well, there's that.
All that is old, all that is new is that which has simply been forgotten.
Yeah. Did you know that Louis the 13th's family, his kids,
No.
he became king, Louis the 14th, and his brother Philippe.
Oh, I know. I know it from one of the great.
Yes. Yeah,
great
Philippe,
movies
the younger brother. The younger brother was dressed as a girl when he was a boy because the mother and the dad did not want the younger brother to ever try to take over the kingdom because Louis the 13th's brother had tried to do that.
Oh, wow.
So if he kept the younger brother sort of girlish, he'd never be a soldier and want to take over.
That must have been why they cast Leonardo DiCaprio in that movie.
Agreed.
Guess what we're having on the show?
Well, guys, it's been awesome. I know we've kept you a little over
sorry,
the already agreed upon hour, but
vampires.
We are, yeah, exactly. But I have two quick questions before we wrap everything up. First of all, tell us what you guys are going to be doing this coming April.
Well, we're going to Dallas because we're not going to be in Israel. We are going to Dallas for the Hugh the Watchman conference called Prophetic Signs in the Heavenlies.
Oh yeah.
Because it coincides with the total eclipse of the sun that will be visible from Dallas on April the 8th. That's a Monday. The conference goes Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and people want to stay in Dallas can, from the comfort of the hotel, join us there as we watch the total eclipse. We were with the Hugh the Watchman family as the total eclipse crossed Idaho back in 2017. So we were there for that total eclipse. We will be there for this one. I'm going to be speaking.
And as it stands, Shawnee, they're a long way away from saying that yet in Israel.
Speaking on the the Valley of the Shadow of Death.
Very, very appropriate, I think.
Yeah. Speaking of shadows, we think we have identified the location of it, that it is a real place, that Jesus signaled it with where he began his ministry, with where he declared his divinity, where he was baptized. Some of his most prominent miracles took place in that region, like the walking on the water, the feeding of the 5,000, things like that, all taking place in that general area between the Sea of Galilee and Mount Hermon. Why? Because of the long supernatural war against these spirits called Rephaim, called Nephilim, called Demons.
Awesome. That's awesome. Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens on April 8th, like we were talking about before. You know, it's fun to watch. You guys were talking about how the path of this eclipse crosses, yeah, it's perpendicular essentially, crisscrosses the path of the 2017 eclipse. And where they cross each other, kind of like the spot that the X marks on the map, is like some place I've never even heard of in, what was it? Illinois, Missouri?
Southwest Illinois, yeah. It's near Carbondale, Illinois. And I made a joke that because the well-known actor John Malkovich actually comes from a small town called Christopher, which I only know because I had to visit Christopher for business on a regular basis. One of our good customers was in Christopher, Illinois. But yeah, Malkovich being sort of a very definite, a unique character with a very definite style to his acting. I was like, yeah, maybe there's some connection between Malkovich and being John Malkovich and that X falling right over.
You know what it is? You know what it is? It's not Charles III.
Yeah.
It's Malkovich is the one with the charisma. He's the Antichrist, guys. John Malkovich. X marks the spot.
You heard it here.
He played a pope in some recent film, didn't he?
Yeah.
Signaling, telegraphing, I see there.
Yeah, nudge, wink, wink. Say no more.
Say no more, say no more.
And finally, I know you guys have been really excited about this. Your set looks great. Tell us about the new barn.
Oh, thank you. Well, you know, we can't take you on a tour of the barn since we can't get up from this spot, but it's an incredible building, 30 by 40, because of many of you out there who are kind enough to help us out with your prayers, your encouragement, and your finances in many cases. We were able to pay cash for everything.
Yeah.
So about $40,000, I think, total.
About that, yeah. We the building came with the property. We didn't go looking for a home with a 30 by 40 foot shop building on it. But it was, yeah. And for 8 years, it basically was just a parking place for our yard tractor.
And a place to store
extra
furniture
and stuff. But we really began in earnest in April when we got back from Israel, cleaned it out, got the excess furniture donated to the stuff that was usable. The stuff that was not is now, off somewhere filling a landfill somewhere. But the rest of it has been done as cost effectively as possible. We've gotten local businesses that have helped us out with the work here. I mean, the floor has been done with an epoxy coating. This area where you see over the top of this is over a floor coating that's got like a 15-year warranty on it. So the next, whoever takes this off our hands someday will be able to turn it back into a giant man cave and bring their monster truck right in here.
It's a beautiful floor, and it was a veteran-owned company.
Yep.
We've managed to work with a lot of veterans around here. It's been quite wonderful to get to know these guys. And many of them have got those Ozark beards going on. So,
yeah. You fit right in, Jonathan.
Oh, yeah.
But the contractor who did most of the work here, who upgraded the power system here, put in a new box, put in all of the wiring, installed the lighting and the ceiling fans, put the paneling up around. Christ-powered construction from Aurora, Missouri, David and Barbara James, and our friend Lynn Shepard, who joined us on our tour in Israel in 2019 and went again this year. She has moved to this area, retired and moved to this area, so she's been over here helping us put together all of this flat pack furniture.
And David, because she knows her way around a power saw.
So it's awesome. And a special thank you to Mike Ward, who's a pastor, a bivocational pastor in Evansville, who
donated the windows for in here,
Yeah.
but also donated windows for our entire house.
Wow.
He noticed that we had windows that didn't function. You couldn't get them up in emergencies. So he sent us windows.
Yeah, so the windows that were in this building, which were the exterior storm windows and cheap ones at that, which didn't keep any heat out or cool out or whatever, they've been replaced with
really high quality
thermal paint, double, low E glass. I mean, just it's amazing. So we now have a climate controlled space for the Unraveling Revelation set, which is what we're on, set right over there for the daily news analysis for Skywatch TV called 5 and 10, video editing on that side of that screen, podcast area over there, and we're not sure what we're going to do over there yet, but we've got a desk. So
there's something over there.
Do you have a place for me to park my motorcycle?
I Yes, absolutely.
Yes, you do.
There you go. Nice.
The great thing about this floor is that if you spill oil on it,
Yeah.
it just mops right out.
Okay, good. I'll bring them
So
up.
we've been told, yeah.
We've been told.
Hey, before we go, everybody, our fans, or our friends and viewers and everything, our subscribers, we've interviewed Derek a bunch of times, but Sharon, this is our first time interviewing you. You are the author of the Red Wings saga. I wanted to ask you, one, this is available, I assume, I know probably on Amazon, but also is it available on your website, and is it better for people to try and get it from you guys directly than Amazon?
You know what? It really doesn't matter to me. You can order it through us. We've got a deal on the whole series, the whole package right now. Book 9 will be out next, probably February, March.
Okay.
But it's on Kindle Unlimited, which means if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read them all for free.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah.
So that answers my next question. What is the next project coming out for you, Sharon?
Well, it's book 9 of the Red Wing saga.
Yeah.
Then I have to write 10, 11, and 12. But I also have a new series called the John Thundercloud Mysteries. Book 1 of that, which is called Angel Falls, I'm hoping to release about the same time as book 9. We'll see if I can manage that.
You know,
And John Thundercloud is an awesome character from one of her earlier novels that was before the Red Wing saga.
Mhm.
So I think viewers
I
will
love those
really,
characters.
really like grumpy old Winnebago Indian who sees into the spirit realm. And he's got a very interesting backstory.
Very
Of course.
interesting.
Yeah.
And of course,
I'm trying to put it back. It didn't work.
Derek and I are writing some nonfiction stuff together that Defender is going to be publishing. But
Fantastic.
we're praying that we can get that done by next March.
And that's the right one.
Well,
We should point out, and I'm gonna,
Okay, guys, that one's over. I did have another good one. Hang on. This is it.
Technology in antiquity, how the Bible, a very exciting show for you today. This is actually something I haven't talked about in quite a while, but I'm excited to be talking about it today. Let me just make sure we are recording and everything is all set. Yep, everything's looking good. All right. So ancient technology, that's a pretty broad topic and a lot of people take it in a lot of different directions, but I wrote a book called Cherubim Chariots years and years and years ago. This was my third self-published book, so this was a long, long time ago. And in that, I talked about ancient technology in antiquity, how the Bible fits into that. We had talked about, and this is where some of this is coming from, but yeah, like how do we deal with the pyramid? How was that made? Who made it? Not only that, but like Vimanas from ancient Indian epics, which sound a lot like UFOs. And if we have time, I don't know, we'll see how long it takes to get through that main part. But if we have time, maybe we can talk about some of the heavenly chariots that the prophets of the Bible have seen. So a lot to get to today, and a very exciting episode. And I'm excited to dig in. If you haven't already, make sure you go to dailyrenegade.com, become a member, because there you can get the full video of this. And the reason that we do that is, again, because we are censored all the time. So we have to have a place where we can put videos where you can actually watch them, but that costs money to do. So it is a subscription thing. It's $10 a month or $100 a year. And if you can do the $100 a year, do that, because you technically get 2 months for free doing that. It's cheaper in the long run. So that is dailyrenegade.com. And also you get videos like a week in advance. So people who have subscriptions have already had this video actually possibly for almost 2 weeks now. I try to stay ahead as much as I can to give as many perks to the members as possible. We are also in the process of updating the website. So that is absolutely happening very, very soon. And there's also some other really, really big announcements, huge life-changing announcements that I can't talk about just yet, but that will be, I'll be talking about that as soon as I can too. Okay, so all that intro stuff aside, let's get right into it. So ancient technology in antiquity, and denizens of dimensions collide. So the account that we find in the 6th chapter of Genesis, along with other Jewish sources, is probably the most fascinating account of humans interacting with extra-dimensional beings that we have available today. Genesis 6 tells us how fallen angels descended to procreate with mankind. The offspring created from this forbidden union are known as the Nephilim. The non-canonical book of Enoch gives us even more details concerning the fallen angels, known as Watchers, and their rebellion against Yahweh. Now, along with their genetic material, we read the Watchers brought their supposed gifts to mankind. Technological knowledge. So chapter 7 of the book of Enoch begins to describe what type of knowledge the Watchers brought with them from heaven. It says, and all the others together with them took unto themselves wives, and each chose for himself one, and they began to go in unto them and to defile themselves with them. And they taught them charms and enchantments and the cutting of roots, and made them acquainted with plants. Now, the knowledge of roots and plants, that'll be important a little bit later. But for now, the description of the knowledge handed down from the Watchers is.
Matchmasters is awesome. I love playing against real people.
You suck at this game.
This is continued in chapter 8. And Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them, and bracelets and ornaments, and the use of antimony, and the beautifying of the eyelids, and all kinds of costly stones, and all coloring tinctures. And there arose much godlessness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray and became corrupt in all their ways. Semyaza taught enchantments and root cuttings. Armoros, the resolving of enchantments. Barakiel taught astrology. Kokabel, the constellations. Ezekiel, the knowledge of the clouds. Arakiel, the signs of the earth. Shamsiel, the signs of the sun. And Sariel, the course of the moon. Now, as we compare the biblical book of Genesis with the non-canonical book of Enoch, we find that these events would have occurred just prior to the flood. Now, concerning the flood, we find a really interesting account that may help provide a different perspective on how some of these secrets survive. So the Jewish historian Josephus writes, they, the children of Seth, also were the inventors of that peculiar sort of wisdom which is concerned with the heavenly bodies and their order, and that their inventions might not be lost before they were sufficiently known. Upon Adam's prediction that the world was to be destroyed at one time by the force of fire, and at another time by the violence and quantity of water, they made two pillars, the one of brick, the other of stone. They inscribed their discoveries on them both, and in case the pillar of brick should be destroyed by the flood, the pillar of stone might remain and exhibit those discoveries to mankind, and also inform them that there was another pillar of brick erected by them. Now, this remains in the land of Syriad, or Egypt, to this day. The ancient non-canonical book of Jubilees continues the story. And he, Canaan, found a writing which former generation had carved on the rock, and he read what was thereon. And he transcribed it and sinned owing to it, for it contained the teaching of the Watchers in accordance with which they used to observe the omens of the sun and moon and stars and all the signs of heaven. Now, if all of these accounts are to be taken as factual, that may help fill in some blanks and answer some really interesting questions. Was there a type of technology in the antediluvian world, meaning pre-flood? And if so, where did that come from? Did it survive the worldwide flood? So let's talk about the Sphinx and the Great Pyramid. Before we do, let's hear a word from our sponsor. Watch this. Concerning the economically unstable times that we live in, it is a great idea to convert some of your savings into real money. Now, there is a big difference between real money and what we call money, which is actually just currency. So our dollar is currency, which fluctuates. Real money, on the other hand, like silver, for example, is a store of value over time. The best way to think of it is like this. If you had saved $1,000 in cash back in the late.
Okay, I don't want to hear about cash.
There's not much information given about the pillars of the children of Seth. We are told that there were two pillars, one of brick and one of stone. They were not sure if the pillar of brick would be destroyed by the flood, so in case it was, they built the pillar of stone and inscribed their discoveries on both. And we're told that at least the pillar of stone remained in Egypt, at least in the days of Josephus, which was 37 to 100 AD. So we are also told that these pillars contain the teachings of the Watchers, and it was considered sinful to follow these teachings. So this begs the question: is there anything in Egypt today that may point to more answers concerning these pillars? And where are they? I mean, who got a hold of those? I wonder what world governments might be in possession of those now, unless they were just destroyed. Who knows? Now, what's presented here, what we're talking about in this video, what I'm going to get into is speculative, but it's still really interesting, and it could provide some clues to our ancient past. There is a possibility that the two pillars could actually be the Great Pyramid, what is now the Great Sphinx in Egypt. Author and researcher Robert M. Schock has postulated, due to the evidence of water erosion, that the Great Sphinx in Giza is far older than most suspect, and that catastrophe of some kind destroyed any other evidence of an older civilization. Schock's research was showcased in the 1993 documentary Mystery of the Sphinx, presented by Charlton Heston. In Mystery of the Sphinx, the idea is put forth that the Sphinx was originally nothing more than a large natural stone jutting from the earth. An unknown civilization saw the stone and decided to carve into it, yet what they carved originally is also unknown. After the unknown civilization was destroyed, a new civilization arrived and carved the stone into the figure of a head. Also, a body was dug out and formed from the ground underneath. Thus, the Sphinx we see today was created. Now, if there's any validity to this idea, it may help explain the pillar of stone that contained the teachings of the Watchers. And it's possible that the stone was found originally, that was inscribed with these teachings. Then the flood came. Later civilizations then, for reasons unknown, possibly due to the actions of Canaan, removed the inscriptions by carving the stone down to the image of a head, and they may have created the body to form a complete cherub-like statue in order to protect something. This could be the pillar of stone. And it's also possible that it was originally carved as like a big lion or something, because you can see when you look at the Sphinx, I mean, the head is totally disproportionate. It's way too small for that body. So it could be that the body was created earlier as well. And then later on, the Egyptians came and carved just the head down. Now, the pillar of brick, then, that could be the Great Pyramid, specifically the missing capstone. And there's certainly a lot of information and speculation that can be looked at in regards to the Great Pyramid. So for our purposes here, we can just look at the theory that the Great Pyramid could be made of brick. And if the builders were unsure if it would survive the flood, it might make sense that they would inscribe the teaching of the Watchers at the very top, the capstone. So what exactly happened to the capstone? Why is it missing today? And if it is still existent somewhere, that's totally up for debate. But it's interesting that we have these two supposed pillars, one of stone and one of brick, and Josephus says that that's in Egypt. Well, what else could it be? In Egypt, you got this big mountain of bricks, the Great Pyramid, and then you have this thing carved out of stone, the Sphinx. Now, of course, when we're talking about these possibilities, there's a lot of theories, and each one is speculative. But I do believe that truth can be found somewhere between all of these theories. At the very least, it's certainly an intriguing subject. And there's a wide variety of resources available to those who are interested in this topic. So for more information about the biblical connection to the mysteries of the Great Pyramid, I highly recommend the book, The Great Pyramid, Prophecy in Stone, by Noah Hutchings. That's a really interesting book. And it's not that long either. You could probably read it in a day. So make sure you check that out. Let's talk about Nephilim grapes. Now, and I know that sounds really weird, but in this idea of ancient technology, the the accounts that we looked at earlier, may help explain a very strange verse in the biblical book of Numbers. Numbers 13:23 says, "And they came unto the brook of Eshcol, and cut down from thence a branch with one cluster of grapes, and they bare it between two upon a staff, and they brought of the pomegranates and of the figs." So these grapes were found in the land of post-flood giants. The most obvious question that comes to mind concerning the size of these grapes is, why were they so big? It took two people to carry just one cluster. They must have been enormous. If it took two normal-sized men to carry one cluster, how big were they? But also, how did they grow so large? Because it seems like even the post-flood giants weren't as big as the pre-flood giants. So how did these grapes get so big? Was there some type of technology involved? And what's really interesting, you can look this up. If you look up the Israeli Ministry of Tourism logo, the actual logo shows this scene, and it's two people, and there's a massive cluster of grapes in between them, just as big as the people are. So that's interesting. Now, explanations of this verse range widely, from person to person. Some form speculations about ancient genetic engineering and that could be post-flood giants may have known some way to do this. And, I think it wouldn't be the way that we're doing it today. I don't think, I don't think they had test tubes and, syringes and things like that in order to do it. But they definitely had some connection to some type of what we would call today dark magic. And I think that's actually what pre-flood science was. I think it was dark magic, but it was a technology in a sense where they could actually make things happen, and it would be repeatable, testable, all of that. So you might wonder, well, why don't we have that stuff today? There are parts in the world where we might have that stuff today, but I think for one thing, I think if they're part fallen angel, the Nephilim, or even the post-flood hybrids or Nephilim or whatever, they have an angelic connection. They have some type of angelic connection built right into their genes, right into their genetic makeup. So I think that they would naturally have an ability to do things that we just can't do. I think that's part of it. Another part of it is I think that like here in America or other parts of the world, I think there's just too many Christians. There's too many Holy Spirit-filled Christians for a lot of this stuff to work anymore. And the reason I say that is there's ancient accounts of ancient church fathers, the very first Christians, that they would go from town to town, and they noticed if there was a Christian around, their oracles weren't speaking anymore. Like Apollo couldn't speak when there was a couple of Christians around, and Christians would get persecuted for this. Like it was a big deal the first couple hundred years of the church. So the more that the Holy Spirit that's indwelling believers, the more those believers are around, the less power the kingdom of darkness has. So that's why we have to turn to actual machines and stuff that can't even replicate anything like the Great Pyramid. And I'm not saying that the Great Pyramid was necessarily built by dark magic. That could have been built by just regular people who had access to techniques that we just don't have access to anymore for various reasons. So there's a lot of different things to consider when thinking why things were so different back then and why we have all this leftover evidence of megalithic structures that we can't replicate today. And if you want just a great resource on that, look up L.A. Marzulli. He's talked a lot about that kind of stuff. So back to the grapes, some say that could have been ancient genetic engineering of some kind. Others try to diminish the grapes themselves to normal size. But again, why would two people you've seen a cluster of grapes, it's not that big. One person could carry several clusters of grapes. Why would it make note in the Bible to suggest that they put one cluster of grapes on a pole and it took two people to carry them? I don't think these are just regular sized grapes. Now, I don't know if there is sufficient evidence to say that the grapes were not genetically engineered or that they were genetically engineered. I'm not completely counting that out, obviously, but I also don't believe that these were normal sized grapes because of the description of how they were carried. And again, I mentioned that the Israeli Ministry of Tourism logo shows the larger than normal grapes in its depiction of that event. Also, Numbers 13:24 tells us that the place was named Eshol, meaning cluster, because the cluster of grapes. So there was something that was, if those were just normal grapes, it certainly wouldn't seem to be worth naming the land after that, especially considering that they took more fruit than only the grapes. There was something that set these specific grapes apart, and it seems to be their enormous size. Now, I want to mention there is another theory, and this might explain it, the canopy theory. And this might be another explanation on how these grapes grew to such large size. So the canopy theory states that before the worldwide flood, there was a vast amount of water, either in the form of vapor or ice or something, that covered the atmosphere of the entire Earth. And this theory says that this canopy resulted in a higher concentration of oxygen and air pressure throughout the world. And it also said that these conditions would allow for things to grow much larger in size. The theory explains that this canopy would have come down during the flood and would have contributed to the water that drowned the world, which, by the way, that would explain the extinction of many of the larger dinosaurs that probably wouldn't be able to survive as big as they were with the atmosphere that we have today. And there might be scientific evidence showing things actually do grow larger in canopy-like conditions. So in 2006, insect physiologist Alexander Kaiser and his colleagues compared 4 species of beetle, and based on their calculations, they were able to show that modern beetles could grow to as much as 6 inches with increased oxygen. So a lot bigger than they normally would. And so this could help explain why things seem so much larger in the antediluvian world. If the canopy theory is correct, the atmospheric water that would have created those conditions would have fallen during the flood. And the passage that we looked at in the book of Numbers took place well after the flood. So the canopy theory in and of itself can't explain the size of the grapes, but it might give us a clue. It's possible the ancient giants of Eshol found a way to recreate the conditions of the antediluvian world to make their crops grow larger. We can do that today. There have been people that have done that today. So this would require a certain level of technology, but not as much as you would need for genetic engineering. Again, like I mentioned, we're even doing things like this today with hyperbaric therapy. So this, among other things that we looked at throughout this video, that could help provide some evidence supporting the existence of technology in our ancient past. Let's see, we're about 20 minutes in. Yeah, we can go a little longer. I was thinking about cutting it to members only here, but let's go a little longer. Because I want to talk about some of the ancient Indian stuff, because that factors in too. So let's talk about some extra dimensional entities of ancient India and some of their technology. So this is obviously in the ancient past as well. The Mahabharata is an ancient Sanskrit epic concerning the history of India. And if you're Christian and watching this is a Christian channel, but we welcome everybody. If you're Christian, you might be wondering, well, Josh, you're a Christian. Why are you getting into ancient Indian texts? Aren't they corrupted? Yeah, and we're going to get into all that. By the end of this, it'll make sense why we're even talking about this. But I do believe that in some of these things, people saw real things, and of course they spiritualized it, and they may have made religions out of it or had it influence their belief systems, much like we do today. I mean, people will have a really weird encounter with an alien or with Bigfoot or something, and it totally changes their paradigm, and sometimes they make a religion out of it. So I think that kind of stuff can happen. But so when we're going to look at some ancient writings from these books, but think of it specifically the writings that we're looking at. Obviously, we're not looking at anything that's going to teach any kind of religious like dogma or anything. But just think of it more as just a historical account of something that somebody saw. Now, you wouldn't look at all of those texts that way. Because they do teach things that, in my opinion, are extremely wrong. Especially if you're a Christian. But the things that we're looking at today. And we'll get into some of what they teach and why it's kind of weird. And I like, my personal belief is I do believe that all these other religions were created by fallen angels, and I am going to talk about that too. So we'll get into all that. I'm getting ahead of myself. So, but just wanted to explain why we're looking into these ancient texts. We don't take it as gospel truth, obviously. I believe that this is fallen angel teaching, but it's still good to know what the enemy teaches, so we have an answer for it, so we know how to accurately teach what God wants us to teach. Okay, so the Mahabharata is an ancient Sanskrit epic concerning the history of India. In its estimated 1.8 million words, the Mahabharata is perhaps most noted for the details that it contains about the Kurukshetra war. I'll probably be doing that a lot throughout this part of the video. And we can find descriptions of chariots, both terrestrial and celestial, or perhaps extra-dimensional. In other words, of men and gods, little g gods. In the Mahabharata, we find a description of a chariot called the Pushpaka. The Sanskrit word Pushpaka it has a variety of meanings. So from the Monier-Williams Sanskrit to English dictionary, Pushpaka is 1, a kind of serpent. Isn't that interesting? 2, of a mountain. Not a mountain, but of a mountain. And 3, of the self-moving aerial car of Kubera, also Vimana. It was carried off by the demon Ravana and constantly used by him till he was slain by Ramachandra, who then employed the car to transport himself and Sita back to Ayodhya. And yeah, we get that from that dictionary. Now, there's other definitions as well, but those 3 are more than enough to suit our purposes here. So in the texts, we learn of the Pushpaka's ability for air travel. So it says, quote, and he rode on that beautiful and sky-ranging chariot called the Pushpaka that was capable of going everywhere at the will of the rider. End quote. We also learn of the origins of the Pushpaka. Quote, and the Lord of Treasures sat on that excellent seat, the elegant Pushpaka, constructed by Vishwakarma, painted with diverse colors. End quote. Now, the interesting thing is that Vishwakarma, sometimes written as Vishvakarman, is the deity of craftsmen and architects. So in essence, he can be considered as the little g god of technology, but in the Vedas, he is also seen as the ultimate creative force, later developed as Brahman. He's also referred to, and this might sound familiar, he's also sometimes referred to as the principal architect of the universe. Now, that wording is especially interesting considering the near identical terminology used within Freemasonry. Now, another interesting description is found in the Mahabharata concerning the Pushpaka. Quote, and the son of Raghu then, having worshipped that Pushpaka chariot, joyfully gave it back to Vaisravana. We learned that the Pushpaka was something that was considered as worthy of worship. Not only was the god Vishwakarma considered the deity, but also was his creation of the Pushpaka airship. Now, there's a common tradition that teaches the serpent of the Garden of Eden was the one responsible for the development of ancient and modern technology. This view stems from certain verses in the 3rd chapter of the book of Genesis. So Genesis 3:17-19 says, and unto Adam he said, because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree of which I commanded thee, saying, thou shalt not eat of it, cursed is the ground for thy sake. In sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. Thorns also and thistles shall bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field. In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread, till thou return unto the ground, for out of it wast thou taken, for dust thou art, and unto dust thou return. Therefore the Lord God sent him forth from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from whence he was taken, and that's Genesis 3:23. So the common interpretation of verse 19, specifically where it says, "In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread," is that Adam would now have to work to prepare his own food. No longer would it be readily available as it was in the Garden of Eden. If Adam wanted bread, he would now have to make it himself. Also, verse 23 states that they had to till the ground. Since tilling ground requires tools and innovation, and since the serpent was the one who tempted them into this position, it's commonly believed that the development of technology resulted from the influence of the serpent. If this is to be taken as literal truth, we end up with a very different picture of what's going on with Viswakarma and the Pushpaka. In the amazing book, Forbidden Secrets of the Labyrinth, Mark Flynn talks about how identities can be assigned to mythological characters to see them from a biblical perspective. If ancient mythology is nothing more than just a deceptive retelling of the truth from the mouth of the serpent and his fallen followers, we can see how assigning identities can be useful in reinterpreting these accounts. If we're to believe there is an ancient evil in the world who is trying to subvert the truth in order to fulfill his own goals, we can expect certain reinterpretations of truth to be prevalent, and they are. So we can look at this in a couple different ways. Viswakarma could represent Yahweh from the view of the serpent. The Pushpaka could represent the serpent himself. This could help explain the alternate definition of serpent for Pushpaka. Viswakarma constructed the Pushpaka just as Yahweh created the serpent. However, in the Mahabharata, the Pushpaka was something that was deserving of worship, just as the serpent seems to believe about itself. Again, think of it as if Satan were telling the story, how would he tell it? Now, it's also possible that the serpent is identifying himself with Viswakarma himself. If the serpent is setting himself up to be the ultimate creator and deity of architects, the Pushpaka could be a representation of the technology he brought into the world. Technology being a creation of the serpent, or at the very least, a result of the actions of the serpent. We wouldn't need technology without the serpent meddling and the curse happening and everything. That could represent the cunning and wisdom that he believes he has. If the serpent is as self-absorbed as the Bible seems to portray, it would be plausible that he would desire worship not only for himself, but for his attributes as well. Now, setting aside the idea of assigning identities, the story of the Pushpaka brings up some interesting questions. Assuming it was the serpent who brought technology into the world. And by the way, when I say that, I'm not anti-technology. I mean, even God said you're going to have to till the ground. Like that's part of the curse. You're going to have to use it. So it's not like a sin to use technology. It just depends what you're using it for. So I don't believe technology is sinful. Obviously, I'm talking into a webcam and posting this on YouTube and using the internet and stuff. Technology by itself is not sinful. It's just it's something necessary that is less than ideal. Ideal was what we had in the garden. We didn't need technology because everything was provided for us. We didn't have to do anything or innovate anything. We could just live and enjoy the peace that God gave us. But since the curse happened, since sin came into the world, we now have to kind of do this workaround thing with technology where we now have to provide things for ourselves. Oh, my cat's here. Oh, what are you meowing about? Oh, well, I don't think I've introduced you guys to, this is Jasmine. Let me bring up my camera here. This is Jasmine. She doesn't like being held for very long, but you came up to me. You interrupted my video. That's one of our 3 cats. What are you doing? So anyway, that was a fun interruption. So let me try to figure out where I was. So assuming that it was the serpent who at least created or manipulated the conditions that would require technology, and in that sense, you could say, in a way, the serpent brought technology into the world. Would this not mean that technology itself has extra-dimensional origins? So with the influence of the serpent and other extra-dimensional beings, how quickly did that technology progress in the ancient past? I mean, if you think about if you think about how fast technology has progressed, even in just over 200 or 300 years, I mean, it's insane. That could have happened at any point in human history. Why is it happening now? Why didn't that happen 2,000 years ago? I mean, we're not really any smarter than we were. I mean, we have the same brains, we have access to the same materials. There's even ancient Greek artifacts where they were working on trying to figure engines out. Why didn't that ever happen? Why is it not until now? And I believe that there was a. Personally, my theory is that we are in the end times. We're approaching the end times. The veil is getting lifted, but God is releasing His hand of protection on the world. I think there was something stopping technological innovation before because it wasn't the right time, and also I think that the more time goes on, the more influence Satan is going to have. So Satan is going to inspire a lot of these technologies that I just don't think he was able to before, because it just wasn't the right time. Also, a lot. I mean, when you think about Christianity today, and you think about Christianity, you know, a couple hundred years ago, it's different. You know, there's. I believe that there's a sifting going on. There's a lot of deceptions out there, especially because of the internet. I mean, there's so many deceptions. And I think that's why it's so easy for Christians to fall into all these distractions and deceptions and stuff. So, and I think that's just going to ramp up more and more and more. But what about the ancient past? Couldn't that have happened before the flood or at any time in the ancient past?
Behind every transaction is a goal to grow your revenue and reach.
Ancient past, couldn't something similar have happened? You know, might ancient man have had access to, or at least encounters with, higher forms of technology than that which is available even today?
There's hieroglyphs of planes, helicopters, and submarines. So he's spot on.
It probably would look like magic to us, and there's actually a famous quote about that. So when we think about ancient magic, I mean, maybe that was just technology and we just don't recognize it as that. Or maybe technology is a dumbed down version of magic. You know, who knows? It depends on how you want to define these terms. So we got to talk about Vimanas. And this is perhaps the most interesting example of possible ancient technology from ancient Sanskrit texts. And it's about Vimanas. So Vimanas are mentioned in the Mahabharata. However, in a text called the Bhagavata Purana, they're more common. So the Bhagavata Purana primarily focuses on Krishna, which in the text, it's the complete incarnation of Lord Vishnu, the Hindu god. And we learn of the Vimana's capability for flight early on in the Bhagavata Purana. It says, quote, as Duntakari spoke, a brilliant Vimana flew down from the sky, soft as the petals of a rose. In it were many eternal dwellers in Vishnu's realm, Vaikuntha. Duntakari, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, by the way, but Duntakari embraced his brother Gokarna and climbed into the ship of the sky. So this Vimana, as described, was a true extra-dimensional vehicle. It's described as flying, but it's also carrying the eternal dwellers from Vishnu's realm. And I want to say again, I do believe all of these are fallen angels. Like all these eternal dwellers, that I believe that that's fallen angel stuff. But we also learned that this vehicle had physicality to it, since Duntakari was able to physically climb inside. As described just a moment ago, this account is not a dream or a vision. This is a description of a personal interaction with an extra-dimensional vehicle. So to further support the extra-dimensional properties of the vehicle, another description of the Vimana's capability is as follows. Quote, the Vimana flashed away into heaven beyond the stars like a thought, leaving a golden trail in the sky, which dissolved in a few moments and vanished above the perfect silence that had fallen on the gathering of men on the earth below. So we see that the Vimana was not only a flying machine of sorts, but was also able to traverse beyond the stars and into their version of heaven. So these vehicles were also reported as disc-shaped and having faster than light travel. By far a physical impossibility, but something that could be possible if from extra-dimensional origins. Quote, I saw devas fly down to the earth in their mystic vimanas, which are swifter than light, end quote. So it's literally saying it's faster than light. And that breaks physics. So that would have to be something outside of physics as we know it. Physics as we know it is based on the three-dimensional world that we live in. Here's another one. Quote, wondrous Alaka, city of the king of the Yakshas and Guyakas, lord of the nine treasures, one of the Lokapalas, the masters of the earth, fairly swarms with Vimanas, which look like immense flying jewels cut like faceted discs, which fly more quickly than light or time, end quote. Now, the fact that Vimanas are described as disc-shaped flying jewels is really intriguing when comparing that to modern-day UFO reports. The reference to them being able to fly faster than light or time, that's especially interesting. You know, this seems to indicate faster than light travel and possibly even time travel. But in either case, these capabilities would be more plausible from an extra-dimensional device rather than an extraterrestrial due to the physical laws of nature. Aliens on another planet would be bound to the same physical laws that we are. We also learned that these were not only vehicles, they were actually palaces of extra-dimensional beings. Quote, with his yogic powers, Kardama created a fabulous Vimana. It was a flying palace. It was surrounded by fine gardens, set with sparkling lakes, and the palace itself was lavished with the 9 precious stones, encrusting the columns that supported the magical edifice, end quote. This flying palace is described as containing fine gardens set with sparkling lakes. So this seems to be describing water and plant life. Now, keeping in mind that Vimanas are described as originating from a higher dimension, we can compare this to the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden was most likely contained extra-dimensional plant life as well, possibly. And this would have been before the fall. But from this, we can see that the higher dimensions are not only populated with intelligent life, but also with non-intelligent life, such as plants. We also read of a biblically familiar ritual that took place before entering the Vimana. Quote, Kardama said to her, go, my love, and bathe in the Bindusaris before we enter the Vimana, end quote. Now, this is reminiscent of the rituals the ancient Levitical priests had to perform before being allowed to be in the presence of Yahweh, which equates to modern-day baptism in Christianity. Again, keep in mind, this is the story if Satan were to tell it. And there, you know, if you're non-Christian and that sounds offensive, I'm going to explain why in a Christian paradigm, because there is a clue in the Bible that suggests that all these other religions were inspired specifically by fallen angels, and why that is the case. So I'm going to get into that in a little bit, but there are more descriptions of Vimanas found all throughout the Bhagavata Purana. So to fully appreciate the depth and vast amount of information, one would have to look at the entire text in full. However, the goal here is not for an exhaustive study of Vimanas, extremely interesting though they are. Our goal here is to establish the existence of ancient texts that contain accounts of personal encounters with extra-dimensional entities and vehicles and technology. So as we will see, Vimanas are just one description of such vehicles. So let's talk about Vishnu. Vishnu is a Hindu deity of preservation, but what makes this fallen god, what makes this god so interesting are his various avatars. So the 10 avatars called Dashavatara are described in an ancient text called the Purana.
10 avatars, that sounds like the 10 kings, doesn't it?
The Harati. And it's said that 9 of these avatars have occurred in the past, and the final avatar will occur in the future as Kalki. And this happens at the end of Kali Yuga, which is the last stage of 4 in a cycle that the world goes through. So Vishnu descends in the form of the avatar Kalki to restore cosmic order. And this is foretold in the Bhagavata Purana. Quote, at that time, the Supreme Personality of Godhead will appear on the earth, acting with the power of pure spiritual goodness. He will rescue eternal religion. Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the spiritual master of all moving and non-moving living beings, and the Supreme Soul of all, takes birth to protect the principles of religion and to relieve his saintly devotees from reactions of material work. Now, the list of avatars varies depending on region and sect, but the standard list is as follows. So first, the number one is Matsaya, the fish. So Vishnu took the form of a fish to warn Vayvasvata, man, these words, of a great flood. Vayvasvata then built a boat to save his family and 7 sages. Doesn't that sound familiar? This account, of course, is reminiscent of the story of Noah in the book of Genesis. Number 2, Kurma, the tortoise. The Devas and Asuras tried to obtain the nectar of immortality by using Mount Mandara to churn the ocean of milk, and this put the mountain in jeopardy of being destroyed, so Vishnu took the form of a tortoise to support its weight. By the way, isn't it interesting? I'm just going to pause. Isn't it interesting that all these ancient religions have like really wild, out there, weird stuff, but then when you read the Bible, it's not like that. I mean, the weirdest that you get is Revelation, but even all of that, it's grounded in prophecy. I mean, it's stuff that's going to happen, but there's no like turtle under the earth or some ocean of milk and a mountain. Like you don't. But what's weird is you get that a lot in Gnostic texts. And it's just interesting that in false religions, it seems to get into this really wild territory. And then when you read the Bible, it's like, oh, actually, this is pretty grounded. This makes sense. Number 3, Vihara, the boar. A demon named Hiranyaksha took the earth to the bottom of the cosmic ocean. Vishnu took the form of a boar to place the earth in its original place by carrying it in his tusks after defeating Hiranyaksha. And I think it's funny too. Non-believers, skeptical atheists, they'll read the Bible and they'll read where like it says that the sun like stayed in the sky for a while. And they're like, oh, that can't physically happen. That didn't happen. That's impossible. But they'll be super respectful of stuff like this. It's just weird. Narasimha. This is number 4, the half man, half lion. The older brother of Hiranyaksha was given a boon from Brahma, which made it so he could not be killed by man or animal, inside or out, day or night, on earth or in the stars, with a weapon either living or inanimate. Finding loopholes to all conditions, Vishnu took the form of a human.
That was interesting. With a weapon, a living weapon. That was an interesting term. Let's hear it again.
Oh, that can't physically happen. That didn't happen. That's impossible. But they'll be super respectful of stuff like this. It's just weird. Narasimha, this is number 4, the half man, half lion. The older brother of Hiranyaksha was given a boon from Brahma, which made it so he could not be killed by man or animal, inside or out, day or night, on earth or in the stars, with a weapon either living or inanimate. Finding loopholes to all.
With a weapon living or inanimate. Wow, I wonder what that means.
Conditions, Vishnu took the form of a human with the head and paws of a lion to kill the evil older brother at the courtyard threshold of his house at dusk with his claws while he lay on his thighs. Vamana, not Vimana, but Vamana, the dwarf. Vishnu descended in the form of a dwarf to petition Bali for 3 strides of land, only to later turn into a giant, thereby making the strides much larger. Number 6, Parashurama, the warrior with an axe. Parashurama is the first warrior saint in Hinduism. He was born of earthly parents and was given an axe by Shiva. He was immortal and is believed to still be alive today in the Mahendra Mountains. Number 7, Rama, the prince and king of Ayodhya. Sita, the wife of Rama, was taken by the demon king of Lanka, Ravana. Rama defeated the demon king and saved Sita. Number 8, Krishna, the 8th son of Devaki and Vasudev. Descriptions of Krishna vary. Sometimes he's a young child playing a flute or a prince offering guidance. Sometimes he is portrayed as a hero, godchild, or supreme being. Krishna is said to ride a chariot pulled by 4 horses, which are similar to the horses of Revelation. The rider of the 4th horse of Revelation is death, yet it also says hell followed him. It does not describe a 5th horse for hell to ride, so it's possible these 4 horses are pulling an unnamed chariot for hell, thereby giving him a means to follow death. Buddha, the founder of Buddhism, this is number 9. Descriptions of Buddha vary as well. At times, he is seen as leading heretics and demons away from the teachings of the Vedas. Other times, he's seen as a teacher of nonviolence. And then finally, 10, Kalki, the final incarnation. Kalki is understood as the final incarnation of Vishnu. It is said he will ride a white horse with a sword that blazes like a comet. Descriptions of Kalki seem to line up with the Islamic end time figure, especially concerning the white horse, and also the biblical Antichrist, as described as the rider of the white horse in chapter 6 of the book of Revelation. Now, what's interesting is in 1877, Helena Blavatsky, which she was spirited, she was really a Satanist, a horribly evil woman, but she published her first major work, a book entitled Isis Unveiled, in which she interpreted the Dashavataras as representing the progression of biological evolution, because of course it's kind of ridiculous, but she interpreted the avatar list as follows. So 1, Matsya, fish, the first class of vertebrates evolved in water. 2, Kurma, amphibious, that's tortoise living both in water and in land, but not to be confused with the vertebrate class amphibians. 3, Varaha, the wild land animal. 4, Narasimha, beings that are half animal and half human, indicative of emergence of human thought and intelligence and powerful wild nature. 5, Vamana, short, premature human beings. 6, Parasurama, early humans living in forests and using weapons. Some of these don't all really fit, but you can tell she's really reaching. 7, Rama, humans living in community, beginning of civil society. 8, Krishna, humans practicing animal husbandry, politically advanced societies. 9, Buddha, humans finding enlightenment. And 10, Kalki, advanced humans with great powers of destruction. So if we look at this all from a biblical perspective, we can recognize Vishnu as an extra-dimensional being, more specifically a fallen angel, and I'm about to talk on how all this stuff developed. But this could explain why Vishnu is sometimes seen as a supreme being and why his story inspires ideas such as evolution and things like that. This could also explain why he is seen as the individual that will save mankind in the last days, yet descriptions are more similar to the biblical Antichrist. Now, all of these things and more would take away from the true God, Yahweh, by offering an inferior replacement, subverting truth, and leading others astray by keeping them in the bondage of confusion. And this would perfectly fit the description of a fallen angel based on biblical descriptions. So why would an angel want to deceive an entire nation? How did they get into a position where they could even do such a thing? And is this why there are so many different religions and belief systems? Well, let's talk about it, because these questions and more can be answered from understanding an often overlooked biblical passage. Now, in the King James Version Bible, Deuteronomy 32:8 is translated like this. When the Most High divided the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel. Now, the issue here with that is that last word of the passage. According to the Septuagint and other translations, the phrase sons of Israel should be translated as sons of God. The English Standard Version renders it this way because of that. When the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance, when he divided mankind, he fixed the borders of the people according to the number of the sons of God. Now that translation makes a lot more sense when we consider the context. And again, you can look at ancient texts and it's sons of God. The KJV, it's a translation mistake. It's just a mistake. It wasn't malicious or anything, but sometimes that happens. When you go back into the ancient text, you actually see that's supposed to be sons of God. So this is talking about when God divided mankind, and that refers back to the Tower of Babel incident. The main reason that the sons of God translations make more sense than the sons of Israel is that at that time, during Babel, the time right after the Tower of Babel, there was no Israel and there were no children to be numbered. However, there were definitely sons of God, or what we would call angels, fallen angels. Sons of God, we would just call angels. Now, the short version of the story states that the people of the world, led by the nefarious Nimrod, built the tower in an attempt to enter heaven and or fallen angels. They worshipped these fallen angels as their gods. So when Yahweh dispersed the people and confused their languages, he did so according to the number of the fallen angels that were worshipped instead of him. It was basically as if Yahweh was saying, okay, you don't want to worship me, but you want these fallen angels as your gods, then you can have them over in your own nations. Now, Yahweh has always offered free will to humans and has always provided a way for humans to return to him if they so chose. Now, if that's the correct translation, it could help explain the origins of all the world's religions. It could also explain why all other religions offer salvation by personal works, yet biblical text states that we cannot attain our own salvation and we are in need of a savior. This could also help explain the purpose for the formation of Israel. The verse immediately following what we already looked at, Deuteronomy 32:9 says, "But the Lord's portion is his people, Jacob, his allotted heritage." So Yahweh gave the people of the world what they wanted, to worship false and inferior gods. Yet he still had a plan for people to return if they would so choose. The plan began with Yahweh taking his portion, Israel, beginning with Abraham, and later being born in the same lineage as the Savior of the people of the world required for salvation, Jesus Christ. All right. We got a little bit, we got more to talk about. We got to talk about Hebrew visions of chariots. And so we looked at the false things. What about the real things? Because there are chariots, heavenly chariots in the Bible as well. And we could absolutely consider this as extra dimensional technology. But you guessed it, we are going to save that for the members only section. So if you haven't had a chance to already, head on over to dailyrenegade.com and get a membership today for the rest of this video, because we got a lot of interesting stuff still to talk about.
Okay, guys, looks like he's out. See you tomorrow. Good night, Di. See you tomorrow, guys. God bless.